TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot. Today, TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Silver Ridge County stretched across the rugged foothills of the Cascade Mountains, a place where mist curled through towering cedars each dawn and the scent of pine and damp earth lingered in every sunrise. In spring, the hillsides exploded with wildflowers, lupin and paintbrush waving in vivid hues against the evergreen backdrop. By autumn, the county fairgrounds were alive with the lowing of prize-winning cattle and the sweet, spicy aroma of cinnamon apples drifting on the wind. Beneath this postcard scenery, however, ran quiet undercurrents of secret shame and unspoken guilt, especially in the Brooks household at the edge of Pinecrest. Pinecrest was a town of 4,000 souls, 2 churches, a single stoplight, and more pickup trucks than parking spaces. It sat at the junction of Highway 92 and County Road 8, ringed by orchards, logging camps, and a handful of mom-and-pop diners that never quite closed. In this tight community, everyone knew everyone else's business, the slightest whisper carrying quickly from the barbershop to the post office bulletin board. Down a dusty red dirt lane, a weathered farmhouse perched on a small rise overlooking a sprawling potato field. Its white paint was chipped and peeling, revealing rough-hewn boards beneath. The porch sagged in the middle, and a windmill creaked whenever a breeze blew in off the mountains. This was the home of Marcellus and Evelyn Brooks and their 2 children, 17-year-old Dexter and 11-year-old Millie, known to everyone as Millie but privately whispered about as the Illicit Daughter. To most residents, the Brooks name still carried respect. Marcellus, the foreman at Timberway Lumber, and Dexter, just back from Northwood Medical College on scholarship. Yet woven into that respect was a hidden tragedy, told only in hushed tones around kitchen tables late at night. Marcellus Brooks was a man carved from the timber he cut for a living, broad-shouldered and stooped from years of hauling heavy planks. He wore grease-stained jeans and a salt-and-pepper beard he rarely trimmed. His voice, when softened, could soothe a nervous colt. When raised, it rumbled like a storm through the mountains. He worked sunrise to sunset at the mill, determined to provide for his family, though some whispered his drive was fueled by guilt for a secret he had buried 2 decades ago. Evelyn Brooks, a decade younger than Marcellus, moved through their home with the grace of a mountain breeze. As a young nurse's aide at Pinecrest General, she had once enchanted neighbors with her cinnamon-brown hair and emerald-green eyes that glinted with compassion. When she married Marcellus, townfolk celebrated. He was a hard-working man of good standing, and she was the bright-eyed girl who had settled countless fevers and broken spirits at the hospital. But only Evelyn knew the truth she carried to her grave. On a stormy night years back, Evelyn had given birth to a daughter, Millie, in a trailer on the old logging road outside town. Ravaged by the wind and rain, Evelyn realized from the baby's hazel-green eyes that Millie could not possibly be Marcellus's child. His were a deep chestnut, like the wood he worked. The father had been Sam Red Wilkins, a logger whose laughter once echoed through the pines. Rumor said he'd vanished into the wilderness, perhaps lost to a snowstorm or a fall from a cliff. Evelyn raised Millie alone for weeks, waiting for Marcellus to return. When dawn finally broke, she saw him standing on the front porch, sunlight glinting off his work boots, his face a mixture of pride and heartbreak. He agreed to marry her, imagine a future, but never spoke of his child's true paternity. Millie was called his daughter, and Pinecrest accepted that story. Millie grew up knowing she was different. At 6, she trot into town wearing hand-me-down dresses that hung too big on her slender frame. Her unruly chestnut ponytail bounced as she carried her worn backpack to Lone Pine Elementary. Yet before the school bell rang, the taunts would start. "You're not a real Brooks. You don't belong here." Each barb landed like a stone in Millie's heart, but she refused to let them break her spirit. Inside the Brooks farmhouse, however, she found solace. Evelyn's arms were a safe harbor, soothing every bruise, physical or emotional, with gentle words. "You are my daughter, and I love you more than the world." Millie's eyes, the same shade as her mother's, glistened with hope. Outside, the woodpile and worn kitchen table bore witness to the family's unspoken grief, but inside, they clung to one another as if tethered by love itself. Dexter Brooks, 17 and lanky as a sapling, towered over Millie and stood as her silent guardian. He'd left Pinecrest 2 years earlier for Northwood Medical College on scholarship, determined to become a pediatric surgeon. At school, his steady hands and calm demeanor made him a star in the dissection labs and trauma practicums. Back home, he would help his mother tend raised flower beds in vivid hues, lupin, columbine, and paintbrush, while Millie chased their Newfoundland pup, Piper, across the yard. On summer evenings, they walked together through the potato fields, he coaching her on algebra, she sketching the clouds above in a battered old notebook. Despite Dexter's successes, he returned home each summer break, trading textbooks for work boots. Determined to protect Millie from Pinecrest's cruel gossip. He had inherited Marcellus's silent strength, but also the fierce loyalty of a brother. The bond between them was unshakable. He drove her to soccer practice on gravel roads, bore her heavy schoolbooks, and let her lean on him when classmates' taunts felt like thunder. The farmhouse itself hummed with routine. Every morning, Marcellus trudged out before dawn to cut lumber. The morning air was thick with the smell of pine resin. Evelyn boiled potatoes and fried eggs from their coop, farm-fresh eggs. She'd announced to Millie, while Millie gathered dandelions for tea. Piper, barely a year old, yipped and bounded between them, always underfoot, yet somehow never in the way. In spring, the Brooks porch became a gathering place at dusk, lit by lanterns that flickered in the twilight breeze. Marcellus would sip sweetened coffee, leaning back in a weathered chair, watching his children chase fireflies among the potatoes' rows. That sense of peace, though, was fragile, like a spider's web strung between the pines. Every so often, Marcellus's jaw would clench as he remembered the night he learned Sam Wilkins was gone, not missing in action but deceased in an avalanche no one could recover. He believed that if he provided enough money, safety, status, he could atone for the secret he'd kept. Evelyn believed in his good heart, even as she shielded Millie from neighbors' whispers. In summer, the county fair brought Pinecrest to life. The Brooks family presented their prize pigs at the livestock barns, Evelyn's hands deftly braiding Millie's hair for the baking competition. Dexter, in his Northwood t-shirt and worn baseball cap, helped a neighbor load bales of hay, joking with old friends who now whispered, "Look at Dexter, Brooks's son. A doctor in the making." Yet when the ribbon for Best Apple Pie was given to Evelyn's carefully fluted crust, the cheers drowned out Millie's small discomfort at being called illicit. By autumn, the crisp air signaled harvest time. The fair's last notes, banjo and fiddle, echoed across the ridges. The Brooks farmhouse settled into golden evenings. Windows fogged from hot cider and cinnamon-scented cookies on the maple table. Millie would lie in bed tracing shapes on the ceiling, dreaming of a future where she'd be the doctor's sister, the pianist, or the artist whose paintings were shown in Salt Lake galleries. Anytime she doubted herself, Dexter would lean over and whisper in her ear, "Remember, Lil, we've got each other. That's worth more than anything." Yet winter brought the darkest days. When snow blanketed Silver Ridge, isolation closed in. The memories of Sam's passing, the hush of neighbors, and the weight of secret shame pressed on the Brooks family. At night, the wind howled through the pines, rattling windows like ghosts seeking entry. Inside, Marcellus and Evelyn would sit by the stove, teacups in hand, and exchange a glance that said, "We'll endure." Millie peeked from beneath her blankets, gripping Piper's fur, and promised herself she would grow strong enough to outlast every whisper. So in Silver Ridge County, a place where wildflowers bloomed each summer and cattle rustled on crisp autumn nights, the Brooks family carried on. Marcellus's shoulders bore the scars of lost love and unspoken regret, Evelyn's eyes held a mother's fierce hope, Dexter's ambitions pointed toward distant horizons, and Millie's spirit glowed like a stubborn dawn. Together, they weathered each season, forging a fragile peace laced with yearning for acceptance, dreaming of a day when secrets could be laid to rest beneath the cascade skies. Millie Brooks arrived on a stormy November night, when Silver Ridge's winds howled like wolves through the pines and rain pelted the windows in relentless sheets. Inside a cramped trailer on the logging road outside Pinecrest, Evelyn Brooks labored alone, gripping the sides of the makeshift birthing bed as pain and hope warred within her chest. In a final, thunderous push, Millie slipped into the world, tiny and wide-eyed, swaddled in blankets stained pink by the midwinter chill. From the moment she drew breath, Evelyn knew that the child's eyes were an unexpected shade of hazel, flecked with light that did not match Marcellus's deep chestnut gaze. Yet Sam Red Wilkins, the father, had vanished into the woods months before, and no one but Evelyn knew his face. At first, Marcellus refused to believe it. He had left on a logging run that morning, certain he'd return before sundown. But the rain delayed his pickup, the roads flooded, and by the time he arrived at the trailer, Evelyn held their newborn as if shielding her from the world. In that single, electric moment, one that widened the chasm between hope and heartbreak, Marcellus saw what he could not unsee. He knelt in silence, resolve and grief clashing in his stirring chest. When Evelyn whispered, "She's yours, too," his voice cracked, but he nodded. He would marry her, he would protect her, and he would give Millie every chance he could. In the weeks that followed, Pinecrest's gossip mill ground into motion. At the general store, behind the bleating of goats at the livestock auction, you could hear the whispers. That Brooks boy was seeing some lost logger's kid. Evelyn's got him fooled. Don't you they call her the fallen angel? The polite smiles at church turned brittle when Eva rose to usher Millie to Sunday school. The community, quick to forgive hard work and proud bloodlines, would tolerate a budding scandal only for so long. Millie's first weeks were spent in Evelyn's arms, sheltered in the farmhouse's cozy kitchen. The oven's warmth baked potatoes in cast-iron pots, and the old wood stove crackled, as if in approval. Marcellus's blue flannel shirts hung from a hook by the stove, damp with lingering rain. He took breaks between logging runs to press his daughter's cheek against his beard, whispering, "I'll keep you safe, little one." But every time he looked into her hazel eyes, Marcellus felt the ghost of Sam Wilkins there, and the ache of betrayal tightened around his heart like a vice. When Millie turned 6 months old, Marcellus constructed a nursery in the corner of their single bedroom. He painted the walls pale lavender, Evelyn's choice, and hammered a small crib into the floorboards. At night, he would stand in the doorway, a silhouette beneath the dim lantern light, watching his daughter sleep. Evelyn tiptoed behind him, placing a gentle hand on his broad back, but he did not speak of the heartbreak that pulsed in his chest. Instead, he let the hush of the room and the quiet lullaby of creaking floorboards speak for him. "I accepted you, despite everything." As Millie reached her first birthday, Marcellus and Evelyn celebrated with a modest gathering on the porch. Neighbors brought pies from the county fair's baking contest, apple and cherry, blackberry and pumpkin. They stood awkwardly along the chipped railing, nodding and murmuring their greetings as Millie toddled between their legs, giggling at Piper, the family's Newfoundland puppy, who danced in circles around her. But the smiles were tight, the glances flickered, and at every turn, someone would whisper, "She doesn't look like Marcellus at all. They say that baby's got eyes like Red Wilkins." In that crowd, malice lingered like a chill. By the time Millie was old enough to start kindergarten at Lone Pine Elementary, the lines were drawn. In the hallway, first-grade classmates recited their daily lessons in hushed clusters, silver tinsel hair bows bobbing over earnest faces. Millie stood small in her favorite purple jacket, hands stuffed into her pockets as she caught sight of children grinding their homework into the floor. When the teacher, Mrs. Carmichael, called the class to line up, red bus on the left, blue bus on the right, Bentley's to the playground, Millie's boots squeaked in time with her racing heart. As she approached the bright yellow bus, a group of girls stood blocking the way. Lisa Myers, whose father owned the local feed store, Chloe Sanders, daughter of the mayor, and brand new transfers from Helena who had moved to town but never outgrew their penchant for drama. They surrounded Millie, eyes narrowed, smirks brimming with cruel intent. When Millie drew near, Chloe pointed. "Look, it's the Brooks bastard kid. Don't let her sit near me." The words hit Millie like hailstones. For a moment, she froze, her chest tightening, pupils dilating at the sound of bastard, an accusation as old as time. Piper's floppy ears, lying in the front seat, seemed far away. Millie's small hands clenched, thumb tucked under a shaky breath. She refused to move. Just then, Dexter pushed through the group, his lanky frame towering over the circle. "Back off," he said in a calm that rippled with steel. He pulled Millie into the circle of his arms. The other children gasped. Dexter Brooks was the local hero, the college kid whose face graced the cover of the Northwood Medical College newsletter. "She's my sister, and I won't hear you talk like that." Embarrassed and outmatched, the girls dispersed with muttered curses. Millie's lip quivered, but she buried her face into Dexter's jacket, chestnut curls brushing his stubbled cheek. He knelt, hugging her until she composed herself, then escorted her onto the bus, one seat back from him, where she felt safest. Yet the taunting did not end there. At recess, the playground's monkey bars and swings transformed into a stage for whispered rumors. Millie's teacher would sometimes find her perched atop the old wooden slide, arms wrapped around her knees, refusing to let go. When Mrs. Carmichael knelt beside her and asked if she wanted to play, Millie shook her head. "They say I don't belong here," she whispered, voice so small it was nearly lost in the crisp air. When word reached Evelyn at home, she dropped her laundry basket with a clatter. "Evelyn, come quick," Marcellus called from the porch. Standing outside, she watched through the window as Millie sat alone amid the swirling autumn leaves. Every so often, Millie glanced toward Dexter, who stood guard at the slide's base. Spots of gold and red danced in Ms. Carmichael's hair as she tried to coax Millie back to the group. Evelyn's heart pounded. She raced to the car, her coat flaring behind her, as though propelled by maternal instinct alone. In the counselor's office, bright and lined with colorful posters, Ms. Carmichael gently held Millie's small hands. "Millie, you have every right to be here," she insisted. "No one can tell you otherwise. You're kind, you're smart, and you're part of our class." But the corners of Millie's eyes glistened with tears. That afternoon, when Evelyn returned from work, she found her daughter collapsed on Dexter's bed, sobbing into his pillow. "Millie," Evelyn said as she entered the room, voice soft as a lullaby. She knelt beside her daughter, stroking that tangled ponytail as Millie trembled. "I love you. I will always love you, no matter what they say." "But I'm not a real Brooks," Millie blurted, words stumbling over tears. "They call me an illicit daughter. Daddy's not my father." Evelyn drew in a breath, fingers trembling across Millie's freckled cheek. "Sweetheart, your father, my husband, loves you every bit as his own. He chose you just as I did. Some people don't understand, but that doesn't matter. What matters is our family." At that moment, Dexter entered. His face was etched with concern. He knelt beside his sister, flinging an arm around her shoulders. "They don't know what they're talking about," he said firmly. "You're my sister. That's all that matters." Millie leaned into him, her small body a wisp of trust, and let him hold her until the tears slowed. Still, Pinecrest's tongues continued to wag. At church potlucks, as casseroles cooled on folding tables, neighbors would exchange uneasy glances whenever Millie's name came up. "Brooks' family still can't shake the scandal," someone would whisper. "That poor girl deserves better." At the 4-H pie contest, mothers proudly displayed their apple pies while casting furtive stares at Millie, quiet in her corner, refusing a slice. The message was always the same: you may live among us, but you'll never truly belong. Inside the Brooks house, the tension was palpable. Marcellus returned from work each evening with a bruised resolve. He tried to shield his daughter, but the pain flickered across his face whenever he caught a glimpse of Millie's haunted expression. Evelyn watched him stand by the stove, rubbing his temple as though warding off invisible torment. One night, while Millie slept, Marcellus whispered in the darkness to Evelyn, "I thought love could fix everything, but I can't protect her from the whole town." Evelyn's tears fell in the lamplight as she reached for his hand. "We'll find a way," she promised, her voice trembling but determined. "We have each other. We can face them together." The next morning, as dawn's pale light filtered through the curtains, Dexter led Millie up to the barn loft, where old blankets were spread over dusty wooden beams. "Let's pretend we're in an airplane," he whispered, lifting her onto a hay bale. Millie perched there, eyes still red from sleeping tears. Outside the window, the fields frost-shimmered, and Piper's bark echoed in the distance. They gazed at the horizon, where a lone hawk circled above the orchard. "One day, you'll soar above them all," Dexter told her. "You'll go to a college like Northwood and become someone they can't ignore." Millie blinked, hope glinting for a moment in her hazel eyes. She wrapped her arms around her brother's neck and leaned into his steady presence. In that loft, amid the sweet scent of hay and the warmth of family, Millie found a flicker of safety, an anchor against Pinecrest's cruel winds. As Silver Ridge's seasons turned from fierce winters to tender springs, Millie continued to navigate the currents of whispered scorn. At school, she learned to bury her head in books, letting her intelligence and kindness speak for her. In the evenings, she and Dexter studied side by side, algebra under the flicker of a kerosene lamp, biology flashcards scattered across the kitchen table, and gentle promises that college would be her horizon. In those moments, Evelyn and Marcellus watched from the doorway, silent and sorrowful. At times, they exchanged worried glances, her heart heavy for her daughter's pain, his chest aching at his own role in it. But they never wavered in their support. Each sacrifice, extra shifts at Pinecrest General for Evelyn, overtime at Timberway for Marcellus, was a testament to a father and mother determined to rewrite a narrative that had started with betrayal. Millie's story was one of shadows and trials, of whispered rumors and tender rescue, of public judgment met with private devotion. In Silver Ridge County, where the wildflowers sang each spring and cattle adorned the autumn fairgrounds, the Brooks family carried their secret like a lantern in the dark, frightening but necessary. And though the world outside remained unforgiving, within that weathered farmhouse's walls, they vowed to stand together, forging a path for Millie that would, one day, lead her beyond the reach of whispered shame. Dexter Brooks slid into the seat beside Carmen Dawson as the morning bell rang, the faint clatter of lockers echoing down Pinecrest High's wide hallway. At 17, he carried the quiet confidence of someone who had already beaten the odds, fresh off a scholarship to Northwood Medical College and celebrated by half the county as the doctor in the making. Yet in Carmen's presence, he felt neither entitled nor superior. Instead, he sensed a shared understanding that bound them together beyond grades or future plans. Carmen, a tall, auburn-haired girl with warm hazel eyes, stood out among her peers for more than her appearance. She had moved to Pinecrest 2 years earlier with her mother after her parents' bitter divorce in the city. Her mother, a single working nurse at Pinecrest General, juggled 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. Carmen's shoulders sloped slightly from carrying life's weight too early. She was known for wearing second-hand flannel shirts and tattered Converse, but also for cradling an old, beaten guitar during lunch breaks, playing gentle chords that seemed to hush the chatter around her. Their friendship had begun in Mr. Reyes's advanced biology class senior year. Most students tuned out the intricate diagrams of mitochondria and cell membranes, but Dexter and Carmen sat side by side, pencils poised. When Mr. Reyes asked about oxidative phosphorylation, Carmen raised her hand. Her voice was soft but confident as she answered. Dexter had leaned over afterward, whispering, "You really know your stuff." She flashed a quick smile and returned to her notes. From that moment on, they studied together. In between classes, they frequented the Rusty Break, a small cafe on Oak Street owned by a kindly couple who served the town's best lattes and homemade muffins. There, amid the hum of espresso machines and the scent of cinnamon, Dexter and Carmen pored over textbooks. When Carmen struggled to differentiate between osmotic pressure and hydrostatic pressure, Dexter would sketch diagrams on napkins until her eyes lightened with understanding. Likewise, Carmen quizzed him on anatomy flashcards, testing his recall of cranial nerves and muscle origins. Their rapport was seamless. He pushed her academically. She helped him stay grounded, reminding him that life extended beyond the pages of any textbook. One frosty November afternoon, as wind whipped pine needles across the parking lot, Carmen caught Dexter staring at his phone with a tight jaw. She set her warm coffee on the ledge between their tables, her knit gloves still dusted with snowflakes. "You okay?" she asked, voice steady. Dexter's shoulders slumped. "It's Millie again." He traced a long strand of dark hair around his finger. "She was in tears this morning. Someone called her a fake Brooks again." He traced a light bruise rising on her cheek. Someone had shoved her at the bus stop. "I hate that I'm not there to stop it." Carmen frowned, eyes narrowing with resolve. "She's your sister. You want me to come with you tomorrow? I'll walk her onto the bus." Dexter offered a grateful half-smile. "She'd love that." "Thank you." That evening, they both met Millie at her house. Dexter's boots crunched on the gravel drive as he climbed the porch, Millie clutching Piper at his side. Carmen, guitar case slung over her back, threaded through the rusty gate and laid a comforting hand on Millie's shoulder. The two girls exchanged shy smiles as Dexter led them to the bus stop for the next morning. Carmen hummed a tune under her breath, an original melody she played on weekends at open mic nights, soft enough to ease Millie's nerves. As autumn turned to winter, snow dusted the town, and the library's windows glowed with lamplight each afternoon. Dexter and Carmen huddled over lab reports, their breath fogging the glass, occasionally pausing to watch snowflakes swirl outside. Even when schoolwork ended for the day, they lingered, talking over steaming tea at the Rusty Break or walking Polaris Park's frozen trail, discussing dreams and fears. Carmen confided in him about how, despite her mother's resilience, money was always tight. Overdue bills left strewn on the kitchen table, heating turned down low to save on heating oil. She spoke of watching her mother work late shifts, returning home bleary-eyed but still checking on Carmen the way no one else did. Dexter, in turn, told her about his anxious nights worrying for Millie and his mother, balancing scholarship obligations with the fear that one slip could unravel everything. Their friendship deepened during a community fundraiser at Lyons Hall. Pinecrest raised funds to keep the local public hospital from closing, and Dexter volunteered to run the health screening booth. Carmen performed acoustic sets between speeches, her guitar reflecting the overhead bulbs as she sang songs of hope. At one point, the microphone crackled, and her voice caught on the word family. Dexter watched her close her eyes, strumming faster until the next chord rang clear and true. When the crowd erupted in applause, Carmen's cheeks glowed a dusty rose, and Dexter's chest swelled with pride in her resilience, in her ability to weave beauty from hardship. It was during that fundraiser that Principal Harper approached them about leadership roles in next year's Junior Olympiad, a statewide academic challenge. She'd noticed their teamwork in biology class and said, "You two make a great pair. If Silver Ridge wants a shot at winning, I need you both." Despite the added pressure, Carmen's face lit up at the thought of representing Pinecrest, and Dexter knew he could never say no to an opportunity to keep her hopes burning bright. At home, while working on a molecular genetics problem set alone one late evening, Dexter felt a familiar pang of guilt. College acceptance was only weeks away, and he couldn't bear the thought of leaving Millie behind. Carmen, his phone buzzed in his pocket, texted him around midnight. "Can we meet at Polaris Park tomorrow afternoon? I need help with something." The next day, he found her at the edge of the frozen stream, boots planted firmly in the snow. She held out a worn legal pad covered in neat cursive. "I applied to a summer music program," she explained, cheeks pink from the cold. But they want recommendation letters. I know you're busy, but I need one from you. Dexter's heart caught in his throat. He knew the music program could mean state-level recognition for Carmen, a chance to pursue her own dream beyond Pinecrest. He nodded, voice steady despite the cold. I'll write it tonight, and I'll hand-deliver it. Her relieved smile was like sunshine. Thank you, Dex. That evening, as he sat at the Brooks kitchen table, he wrote a letter that poured little of his personal anxieties onto the page. He described Carmen's unwavering courage, her kindness that comforted Millie, and how her music soothed the county fair's chaos. He emphasized her academic achievements, straight as in chemistry, biology, and literature, and her leadership in the Junior Olympiad. As he signed it, "Your biggest fan," he realized how proud he was that fate had brought Carmen into his life. Winter gave way to a crisp spring, apple blossoms unfurled, and the county prepared for its annual fair. The Brooks family walked home together one evening, Dexter, taller now with his new Northwood t-shirt stashed in his backpack, Carmen, carrying her guitar, and Millie, bundled tight, Piper padding at her heels. The sidewalks glowed with street lamps that cast honeyed light over late-blooming crocus. As they passed the fairgrounds, music and laughter spilled into the night. Carmen caught sight of a banner. Pinecrest Junior Olympiad, next week. She squeezed Dexter's hand. We're doing it, aren't we? He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Together. In that moment, on the edge of Silver Ridge's rhythm of renewal, the four of them, Dexter, Carmen, Millie, and Piper, stood united. Their friendship was a testament to what could bloom from hardship, a bond forged in late-night study sessions, lullabies by the crib, and harmonies under the stars. As spring scent drifted on the breeze, Dexter realized that no matter where life led him, Northwood Medical or beyond, he would never forget the girl whose music healed his soul and the sister he would always protect. Carmen's guitar case swung against her leg, and Piper barked as though urging them to move faster. Millie's dark eyes sparkled behind her bangs, and Dexter smiled down at her, feeling the whole world shift under his feet. In Silver Ridge County, where the pines stretched like sentinels to the sky, there existed a friendship capable of weathering any storm, one that would shape their futures in ways neither of them could yet imagine. Late April in Silver Ridge County found the air perfumed with apple blossoms and freshly turned earth. Patches of green had crept back into the foothills, and morning light filtered through budding maple branches. For Dexter Brooks, the mornings carried a particular energy. Each dawn brought him closer to a dream he had nurtured since childhood, walking the corridors of Northwood Medical College as a first-year student. Yet an undercurrent of bittersweet reality pulsed beneath his excitement. Leaving Pi, the news arrived on a Tuesday afternoon via email. Dexter sat at the kitchen table, elbows propped on a stack of old biology textbooks, sipping the last cool dregs of his coffee. Evelyn bustled about, sorting laundry in the adjacent room. Millie cradled Piper in the living room, ear pressed to her father's phone speaker as Carmen sat beside the computer desk quietly studying. When Dexter's inbox notification chimed, Evelyn peeked around the corner. "Check your email, Dex," she said softly, wiping her hands on a faded dish towel. He logged in. The subject line, Northwood Medical College admission decision, hovered over his anxious eyes. His breath caught as he clicked. A cascade of text appeared. "Congratulations, Mr. Dexter Brooks. We are pleased to inform you of your acceptance into the Doctor of Medicine program at Northwood Medical College for the fall semester of 2022. Your academic record, commitment to community service, and personal statement distinguished you among our competitive applicant pool." His heart thundered, and a grin spread across his face. "Mom, Millie, Carmen, I got in," he whispered, voice thick with disbelief. Evelyn rounded the corner just as Carmen burst into excited tears. Millie bolted into the kitchen, Piper bounding at her heels. In an instant, the kitchen table became the epicenter of joyous chaos. Millie shrieked, "You did it, Dex. You really did it," and affixed him in a tight bear hug. Piper barked in delight, circling between their legs. Carmen patted his shoulder, struggling to keep composure. I knew you would. Evelyn's eyes glistened as she reached for Dexter's shaking hands. You've made us so proud, she said, her voice catching on a sob. Marcellus stood in the doorway, arms folded but tears shining in his stoic eyes. Dexter turned to him, gulping as though bracing against every emotion. Dad, thank you, he managed. Marcellus nodded, stepping forward to envelope his son in a rough, earnest hug that left both of them breathless. That evening, under a sky brushed pink by the setting sun, the Brooks family gathered on the front porch. Millie perched on the petal-shedding railing, clutching Piper's paw. Carmen leaned against the side of the porch, tuning her guitar with a quiet smile. Marcellus lit the old kerosene lantern, and its warm glow spilled across their faces. Dexter took a steadying breath. I leave in 6 weeks, he said, voice echoing against the distant mountains. Orientation starts August 1st. The words hung between them like a fragile promise. Evelyn's knuckles whitened around the lantern's base. Millie's chin quivered as she twisted a lock of her chestnut hair. Carmen's hazel eyes met his, brimming with pride and an unspoken sorrow. I'll miss you every single day, Millie whispered, gripping Piper tighter. Dexter knelt to her level. I'll call every night. I promise. And you'll have our cameras on your phone, video chats as often as you want. He ruffled her hair, and she nodded slowly, tears splashing onto Piper's soft fur. Across the yard, Mr. Harper, neighbor and owner of the general store, waved as he pulled his old pickup down the gravel lane. Every corner of Pinecrest seemed to breathe because Dexter had earned a ticket out. County fair ribbons, science fair trophies, volunteer shifts at St. Jude Regional's mobile clinic. Now, as he prepared to trade pine-scented skies for city traffic and towering hospital corridors, he felt a pull of nostalgia, roots tugging at his heart. Over the next 6 weeks, the Brooks household buzzed with preparations. Dexter cleared out his childhood bedroom, stripped of posters showing human anatomy charts and football schedules, leaving only the essentials: textbooks, a few treasured family photos, his laptop, and lab notebooks. He loaded boxes into his beat-up Corolla with the help of Marcellus, each cardboard container labeled carefully: licenses and IDs, clothes and coats, papers and trophies, and Dex's stuff. When he paused in the driveway, handing his dad the final box, Marcellus clasped him on the shoulder with a prideful glint. Make us proud, son, he rumbled. Evelyn and Millie spent an entire Saturday shopping for college necessities in Helena, where bigger stores carried dorm room essentials, stainless steel cookware, a miniature fridge, and a sturdy duffel bag. In the long line at the register, Millie pressed close to her mother. Will I ever see you again on a Wednesday? She asked, voice full of childhood's desperate cling. Evelyn knelt and gazed into her daughter's hazel eyes, blinking back tears. Every Wednesday, if you want. Mommy will come visit, she promised. Millie sniffled and hugged a bright pink duvet set to her chest, as if it were a lifeline. On a humid July morning, Dexter and Carmen met at Polaris Park to mark a final ritual. Pitching a coin into the frozen stream's shallow pool, an echo of last winter's memories. Carmen had coaxed him into walking the path one last time before his departure. The grass was tall now, sprinkled with dandelions that nodded like a small army of hope. Birds trilled from cottonwood branches, and distance hum from the logging mill was replaced by Polaris Park's hush. Carmen wore denim shorts and a hand-knitted shawl, the gentle chords of her guitar's strap pressing against her back. What's one last song before you go? Dexter asked, scanning the emptiness around them. She inhaled deeply, finding the perfect melody buried in her chest. As she strummed, the notes drifted across the water, carrying a gentle sadness and unwavering hope. Dexter closed his eyes, letting each note wash over him, and a cappella farewell he would never forget. When the final chord rang, Carmen looked at him, tears glimmering but her expression resolute. You belong there now, she said. Make every day count. He nodded and wrapped her in a hug. You do, too, Car. They parted, holding on to that moment as though it were a talisman against time. Across town, at Pinecrest General, Evelyn and Marcellus finalized the farewell party details. Nurses and loggers would gather in the hospital cafeteria, bringing casseroles and pies to celebrate Dexter's next chapter. When Evelyn crafted an apple pie, green-kiss apples picked by Millie's small hands, her thoughts lingered on the future. Her son, now part of a medical program that served thousands, her daughter, who still giggled at puppy antics. She arranged the pie under the cafeteria's fluorescent lights, framed by balloons that spelled out, "Congratulations, DX." That Saturday, the party unfolded beneath a banner stretching across the cafeteria's blue-tiled wall. A cluster of colleagues from St. Jude Regional praised Dexter's work ethic. Reminiscing about the summer he spent assisting on pediatric outreach clinics. Marcellus slapped him on the back so hard it rattled the dessert table, grinning from ear to ear. "You're off to save lives, son." Evelyn caught Dexter's eye, and they shared a rueful smile, pride and love dancing in their gaze. Millie perched on a folding chair nearby, proudly wearing a "My brother is a doctor" pin, a cupcake smudge on her cheek. When evening's hush settled, Dexter stood on the porch again, suitcase at his side. Pinecrest streetlights blinked on one by one, transforming the sleepy sidewalks into pools of gold. Piper trotted at Millie's heels, whining softly. The family gathered around him. Marcellus, arms folded but tears damp at the corners of his eyes. Evelyn, cheeks flushed with emotion, not letting go of his hand. Millie, clutching his leg as if frozen in time. And Carmen, standing just beyond the porch steps, guitar case in her hand, eyes glistening. They formed a circle that held every dream and fear between them. Dexter inhaled the night air, tasting pine and promise. "I'll call you right when I land," he said, voice gentle but firm. Millie's tears fell freely as she clung to his calf. Evelyn placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember us when you're saving the world." He knelt to her level. "I'll be back every chance I get. Pinecrest will always be home." He rose, planting a quick kiss on his mother's cheek and then on Millie's forehead. Marcellus wrapped his massive arm around his shoulders. Piper barked, licking Dexter's boot. Lastly, Dexter turned to Carmen. Her guitar case dangled from one hand, the other pressed to her heart. "You'll be amazing," he told her. "I promise." She gave a shaky nod, voice caught in her throat. The road to Salt Lake City lay stretched out before him, interstate ribbons, distant city lights shimmering against the horizon, and the promise of knowledge that had been his North Star. As the engine of his Corolla rumbled to life, the taillights glowed like tiny beacons. He saw Millie's tear-streaked face, Evelyn's proud smile, Marcellus's silent salute, and Carmen's steady gaze. He pressed the accelerator, and in that moment, the dream he'd chased since childhood became real. He was leaving for Northwood Medical. Behind him, Silver Ridge County's Sentinel Pines stood watch as his taillights disappeared around the bend. Ahead, the city lights beckoned, new opportunities, challenges, and the chance to shape a future he had once only dared to imagine. With every mile that rolled beneath his tires, he carried those he loved with him, roots that would forever anchor him to the place where it all began. 3 months into his first year at Northwood Medical College, exams, late-night study sessions, and clinical rotations, Dexter Brooks felt the tide of ambition ebb and flow in his chest. His days blurred, waking before dawn to jog the campus's manicured paths, rushing to histology lab at 7 a.m., then sprinting to the hospital for rounds before grabbing dinner from the student cafeteria. By the time he arrived at Riverbend Clinic, a community health center on the outskirts of Salt Lake City, he was already running on fumes. Yet he sensed that this calling, serving neighborhoods that couldn't afford glossy hospitals, was exactly where he needed to be. Riverbend wasn't glamorous. The building was a low-slung brick structure with peeling paint, a handful of wheelchair ramps, and a parking lot perpetually half full of beat-up sedans and rusting pickups. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed over red vinyl examination tables, beige linoleum floors, and a row of mismatched chairs in the waiting room. Dinosaur-aged magazines, some with dog-eared pages, sat in a wobbly rack, alongside a rubber tree plant that clearly needed a larger pot. Yet for Dexter, those signs of wear were a reminder of why he was here. Riverbend served some of the most underserved communities in Salt Lake County: migrant farm workers, recent refugees, and families without health insurance. On his first morning as a clinical observer, Northwood's term for trainees, he reported to nurse manager Carlos Velasquez, a lean man with thick glasses and a perpetual stubble shadow. Dexter Brooks. Carlos asked from behind a cluttered desk in the nurse's station, scanning his clipboard. When Dexter nodded, Carlos extended a calloused hand. "Welcome to Riverbend. You'll shadow our lead nurse this week. Efficiency runs on empathy here, remember that." Before Dexter could respond, a flurry of activity erupted at the far end of the station: a soft moan, the hurried shuffle of shoes against tile, and the metal ring of a stethoscope being flipped into place. A young woman burst through the pair of swinging double doors. Dexter felt time stutter as he noticed her long, satiny hair twisted into a loose knot, tendrils escaping around her temples. She wore teal scrubs that complemented her warm olive skin, and a faint dusting of freckles danced across her narrow nose. "Dr. Brooks?" she asked, voice gentle but carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "I'm Juniper Rivers, the floor's lead nurse. I hear you're joining us for rotations." She offered her hand. "Welcome to Riverbend." Dexter took it, surprised by the warmth radiating from her firm, calloused palm. "Thank you, Ms. Rivers. I'm looking forward to learning from you." Her dark eyes curved into a half-smile as she guided him through the sliding doors. "Call me Junie," she said. "Let's get you checked in." They weaved past patient rooms where older diabetic men slumped in bed, and children in two big gowns clutched candy-striped gauze over scraped knees. In each room, Junie, without missing a beat, offered a comforting word or a gentle touch, and Dexter felt a lump form in his throat at the tenderness she conveyed. Finally, they reached a small conference area where a cluster of nurses hunched over computers, charting patients' vitals. Junie tapped the touchscreen, entered Dexter's ID, and handed him a lanyard bearing the clinic's logo, a stylized river winding between two mountains. "Here's your badge," she said. "Wear it at all times. We're understaffed this week, too, SOS. Intubations yesterday, so we'll be busy. First, I'll introduce you to our patients. Then later, I want you to find out what each person's baseline vitals are. We're doubling the number of home visits, so we'll need to triage quickly." As she logged into the computer, Dexter snapped on the badge, swallowing a dry gulp. "Understood," he said. "I'll do my best, Junie." Her eyes flicked up. "Everyone calls me Juniper," she said, retrieving her stethoscope from around her neck and flipping it against her palm. "But you can use Junie for short, unless you're craving extra teasing from Ms. Martinez over there." She nodded toward an older nurse whose arms were folded like a fortress. The second nurse glanced up and arched an eyebrow at Dexter, then pecked Junie on the cheek before returning to her charts. With Junie as his guide, Dexter kicked off his first day. They began with Mrs. Mendoza, a Mexican immigrant recovering from hip surgery, who sat up in her bed, her cane leaning against the bedside table. Junie greeted her in Spanish, deftly switching between English and Spanish as they discussed blood sugar logs and wound care. Mrs. Mendoza's brown eyes crinkled in relief when Junie brought her chart closer, asking about her father's health back home in Durango. As Dexter observed, Junie listened with the kind of empathy that textbooks could never teach. By mid-morning, their next stop was Mr. Thompson, a World War II veteran with COPD, who coughed clouds of stale breath into the thin, recycled air. Junie assessed his lung function with a handheld spirometer. Dexter noted the device's readings, low forced expiratory volume, but Junie's calm reassurance eased the man's anxiety. She explained inhaler techniques with kindness, even joking about how the new equipment could sometimes feel like dragging dead weights uphill. Mr. Thompson's dismissive grin required a moment's extra coaxing, but when Junie mentioned that she'd once visited his boyhood town outside Boise, the man's hardened expression softened into a nostalgic warmth. Between patients, Dexter helped Junie track home visit routes. She scribbled notes on a crinkled street map and labeled locations. Mrs. Nguyen, dialysis follow-up. Mr. Randall, blood pressure check. Donna, new diabetic teaching family session. Her handwriting was neat, precise, each letter rising and looping in practiced fluidity. Dexter tried to match her rhythm as he scribbled his own notations. As noon approached, a new patient rolled into the lobby, a small-framed woman with braided black hair and wire-rimmed glasses, dragging a battered rolling suitcase. She introduced herself as Rachel Bloom, a single mother who had recently lost her job and was looking for sliding-scale options for her daughter's asthma management. Junie greeted her with the same gentle calm she'd shown all morning. "We'll get you set up, Ms. Bloom. Please follow me. We'll take it from here." After lunch, a sandwich hastily grabbed from a vending machine, Dexter returned to the charting station. "Junie was hone." Instead, Mr. Velasquez motioned him over. "We have an urgent call from Mr. Maxwell in the next-door county. He's been showing signs of early congestive heart failure, and his PCP recommended immediate evaluation. He's about 15 minutes north. Today's your first chance at a home visit. Want to go with me?" Dexter's heart raced. Absolutely. 10 minutes later, they navigated a twisting back road through cottonwood groves until they arrived at a modest ranch-style house with peeling siding and a rusting mailbox that read Maxwell in faded vinyl letters. Mr. Maxwell, a heavy-set man in his mid-60s, sat on a sagging porch swing, his hand over his abdomen each time he shifted. His breathing was labored. Junie measured his vitals. Blood pressure 160/94. Resting respiratory rate 24, and his ankles were pitted. She made quick notes on a latex glove and turned to Dexter. "I want you to help me with his diuretic adjustment. He'll need a new prescription, and we'll arrange follow-up labs in a week. Check his fluid intake and output logs, too." Dexter knelt, scanning a crumpled notebook. Coffee, water, 2 beers, 3 glasses of juice. His fluid overload is significant. He also admits to missing doses of his ACE inhibitor. He jotted down a reminder to counsel him on medication adherence. Junie nodded approvingly. "Good observation. Have him avoid NSAIDs. They exacerbate retention." "Okay, let's head back." In the car, Junie glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "You've got a keen eye and a heart for this work. I can tell you're going to do great things." Her praise was unexpected, yet it felt like a buoy, rising inside his chest. Over the next 2 weeks, Dexter and Junie's paths crossed countless times, morning rounds, triage sessions, and weekend fundraisers to supply medical kits to local low-income families. Each encounter shed light on their complementary strengths, Dexter's academic precision balanced by Junie's seasoned intuition. They formed a rhythm. She would spot a patient's emotional needs before he charted their physiological ones. One Saturday morning found them side by side at Riverbend's Health on the Hill outreach program. Small tents lined a dusty field behind the clinic, labeled blood sugar screening, vaccinations, and nutrition counseling. Junie had set up a portable exam table covered in crisp, white linen and pastel pamphlets about smoking cessation. She assessed a young mother whose newborn daughter struggled with eczema. Dexter measured the baby's weight while explaining a treatment plan. The mother's anxious gaze flipped between them, relief blossoming as Junie handed over free samples of herb-infused moisturizer. After the mother left clutching her new release forms, Junie exhaled deeply. "We combined our scalpel of knowledge and bandage of kindness," she said with a laugh, high-fiving Dexter. He smiled, elbowing her gently. "Tonight, I treat you to dinner at Pemberton's Diner." My shout. Her eyes sparkled. "I'll hold you to that." That evening, they sat in the glowing neon haze of Pemberton's, linoleum floors. Formica tables adorned with ketchup bottles and bone-shake milkshakes. They shared grilled turkey sandwiches, crunchy coleslaw, and steaming cups of coffee. The conversation drifted from their families to future dreams. "How's your sister, Millie?" Junie asked after he recounted the latest incidents of bullying. Her sympathetic tone made him want to confess everything, the shame she'd carried, the frustration he felt at being 1,000 miles from home. Instead, he offered a lighter account. She's hanging in there. School's tough, but she and Mom, well, they're both fighters. Junie nodded, fingers tapping the edge of her coffee mug. My younger brother thinks I'm crazy for choosing nursing over music, but seeing patients' eyes light up, that's my symphony. She traced a drift of steam with her finger. Your dad must be proud. You're doing good here. Dexter turned his eyes to his plate. I'm trying. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough. The confession spilled out unguarded, raw. Junie reached across the table, placing her hand over his. Dexter, you're more than enough. You step into tough situations and meet them head-on. For someone whose family is so far away, you remind me every day what compassion looks like. Her words seeped into his chest, steadying a fear he barely admitted, the fear of not being able to live up to the Brooks legacy, of letting everyone down. Their conversation softened into a companionable quiet. Outside, dusk settled over the parking lot, taillights pulsing like fireflies, and overhead, a single street lamp cast a halo over the diner's windows. In that hush, Dexter realized how much he valued Junie's presence, a steady flame in the whirlwind of medical school and clinical demands. Over the next month, their connection deepened in subtle ways. Sometimes Dexter arrived early at the clinic only to find Junie already at the front desk, organizing charts. She'd pass him a cup of coffee with a gentle smile. Thought you could use this. Other times, they'd be elbow-deep in bandages, tending to an overdose victim or counseling a diabetic patient who'd fallen behind on insulin. Junie's experience, 8 years at Riverbend, with 2 before that in public health outreach, taught her to notice the tiniest tremor in a patient's hand or the way their eyes darted away from tough questions. She showed Dexter how to blend medical acumen with unwavering empathy. One late afternoon, they discovered, unwillingly, that what happens in the clinic stays in the clinic wasn't entirely true. A local reporter, chasing a story on Riverbend's new antibiotic protocol, snapped a candid photo of Dexter and Junie reviewing scans on a computer screen. In the image, their heads were bent together in a moment of intense focus, their proximity highlighted by identical steel blue scrubs. When the article hit the Pinecrest Gazette's website, their colleagues in Pinecrest sent screenshots of the story. Local doc and training teams up with Riverbend's Angel. Brooks and Rivers bring heart to healing. Suddenly, texts poured in. Carmen's trademark, LOL, I knew you'd find a friend in the big city. Don't break her heart, and text messages from Evelyn. Be good, son. Take care of each other. Even Marcellus chimed in with proud of you, son. Now get some sleep. That evening, Dexter leaned back in his tiny Salt Lake apartment, phone buzzing against his palm. He stared at Junie's name on the glass. Her text simply read, Coffee tomorrow? Same place. His heart thumped. He typed, Wouldn't miss it. As spring edged toward summer, Dexter and Junie continued to stand shoulder to shoulder, navigating Riverbend's high-stakes days. There were moments when they held each other's hands during emergencies, an unexpected diabetic coma, a ruptured appendix in an elderly patient without transport money. But there were also small triumphs, coming together to cheer a breast cancer survivor at her follow-up appointment. In each case, they discovered how their strengths intertwined, Junie's seasoned intuition guiding him to ask the right questions, and his medical knowledge giving her the tools to keep patients safe. At times, the line between doctor and friend blurred. On a particularly chilly evening, Junie rode with Dexter to visit a homebound patient. The sick man's creaky front door swung open to reveal a single light bulb dangling from the ceiling. His oxygen concentrator whispered in the corner. As Junie set out a portable nebulizer, Dexter watched from the doorway, heart heavy. When Junie turned to steady the patient's trembling hand, Dexter felt the ache of gratitude, mixed with longing. He realized how much her steady presence had anchored his life in a whirlwind of clinical demands. After the appointment, they trudged through a settling snow, boots slipping on ice. Junie shivered, rubbing her arms. Dexter offered his jacket, but she refused until he met her eyes. I can't hear you say I need you, he whispered, voice tight. Junie paused, her breath visible against the night. Then she took his hand and said, softly, "You're not alone, Dexter. Neither am I." Lightning flashed across the valley as thunder rumbled overhead. In that moment, amidst swirling snowflakes, Dexter understood something fundamental. His future would always include Junie, whether as friend, colleague, or something more. The path ahead was uncertain: residency decisions, licensing exams, family obligations, but there was a fierce certainty in the way her fingers curled around his. Back at Riverbend Clinic the next day, beneath the hum of fluorescent lights and the steady click of keyboards, they slipped seamlessly into their roles: healing hands, listening ears, kind hearts. When Carmen arrived for a rotation as part of her own nursing coursework, Junie introduced her with a proud grin. "Meet my best pre-med friend, Dr. Brooks, in training at least." Carmen laughed, hugging both of them. Dexter beamed. In that moment, it felt as though their shared purpose, restoring health and hope, was a beacon guiding them through clinical chaos and personal storms. In the heart of Riverbend Clinic's faded brick, amid the constant swirl of wheelchairs and whispered concerns, they found a bond unbroken by distance or doubt. A friendship, and perhaps something deeper, strong enough to heal their own wounds as they healed others. By early autumn, Salt Lake City's evenings carried a gentle chill, and the air shimmered with crisp promise. For Dexter Brooks, who spent most days in hospital corridors and lecture halls, these twilight hours were a sanctuary, especially because they were often shared with Juniper Rivers. Their friendship had deepened into something warm and luminous, and neither needed words to confirm what their hearts already knew. This was love. It began in small moments. One Wednesday, after their usual Health on the Hill clinic at Riverbend, they packed up the last of the medical tents together and walked to a nearby pizza shop. As they shared a quiet booth beneath warm Edison bulbs, Junie brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Dex, you're getting so serious about medicine. Proud of you." She reached across the table, her hand resting on his. He squeezed her fingers, smiling as he realized how natural, which is to say, inevitable, it felt to hold her hand. Afterward, they drifted into a crisp evening, walking along the Jordan River Parkway. The moon hung low in the sky, its reflection rippling across the water. Junie hums drifted from her lips as she thumbed through her guitar case, and Dexter thought he'd never known such peaceful contentment. He paused to cup her face in his hands, leaning down to brush his lips against hers. She responded with a gentle pressure of her own. In that moment, under the dance of moonlight and leaves, it felt as though the world had shrunk to the two of them alone. Over the next few weeks, their routine solidified into what both would later call the happiest time of our lives. Dexter greeted Junie each morning with coffee and warm muffins from the cafe on Main Street. "Just the way you like them," he'd say, handing her a steaming paper cup. Junie, in return, tucked handwritten notes into his coat pocket, doodles of stethoscopes and heartbeats, cryptic musings about how every patient is a story and how she couldn't wait to hear what story they'd write together. Saturdays were reserved for their house call dates, visiting homebound patients in the suburbs. They would greet Mrs. Hayworth, who lived alone with her osteoarthritis and a stubborn calico cat named Mr. Whiskers. Dexter measured her vitals while Junie taught her granddaughter to be the chief of snacks by pouring juice for both of them. The granddaughter giggled whenever Junie tapped out a short melody on her guitar's body. "Doctor, can I play?" And Dexter joined in with a whispered, "Nurse Rivers, conductor?" By October, the leaves had turned to flame, and college football games were in full swing. One crisp Friday evening, Dexter and Junie attended a Northwood Huskies game. They sat wrapped in matching navy and gold scarves at the 50-yard line, the roar of the crowd vibrating the air. When the Huskies scored a touchdown, Junie lifted her voice in a triumphant cheer. In that moment of collective euphoria, Dexter reached into his coat pocket, fingertips brushing a small velvet box. He waited until Junie turned to him, eyes shining like stadium lights. Between the echoes of marching bands and cheering fans, he clasped her hand. "Juniper, "I've loved you since the first time I saw you light up a room at Riverbend," he said. The world narrowed to her green olive eyes. "You taught me what compassion really means. I can't imagine my life without you by my side." He dropped to one knee on the metal bleacher, heart pounding as the cheers around them rose. She gasped, covering her mouth in disbelief. He opened the box, revealing a slender platinum band set with a single sparkling diamond. "Will you marry me?" The stadium's roar surged again, partly for the game, partly for the proposal. Junie's cheeks glowed as she nodded, tears shining. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they shared a tender kiss. The husky cheerleaders erupted into chants. Kiss, 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 as if punctuating their celebration. Dexter stood, pulling Junie into a triumphant embrace, oblivious to cheers and high-fives from strangers. Their future now felt etched in that moment, every exam, every late shift, every patient visit culminating in this single act of devotion. Over the following weekend, word of the proposal swept through Riverbend Clinic. Nurse manager Carlos Velasquez, arms folded over his chest, beamed as Dexter walked in Monday morning. "So, Dr. Brooks, how does it feel to be engaged?" he teased, handing Dexter a fresh chart. Junie offered a shy laugh, her engagement ring glowing under the fluorescent lights as she scribbled patient notes. Patients themselves took notice. Mrs. Mendoza, now walking without a cane, clapped when Junie recounted the news. Mr. Thompson said, "Congratulations, my dear. Just don't let Dexter forget to call once you're off by yourselves." Even Ms. Martinez, the ever-stern charge nurse, allowed herself a soft smile. "You two make a good team," she admitted as she adjusted Dexter's clipboard. "Don't let the city life change you." By late October, it was time for a formal engagement introduction, something that, in Junie's family, held the same weight as a wedding ceremony. They planned a dinner at the Rivers home, a modest brick house on the West Bench, surrounded by trees just turning gold. Dexter crawled through every Barnes and Noble for the perfect gift, settling on a leather-bound journal so Junie could record her musical compositions. Junie, in turn, pressed Dexter to meet her parents. "They deserve to know who stole their daughter's heart," she said, brushing his hands with her own. On a crisp Friday evening, Dexter drove to Junie's house, hands trembling as he spotted two figures waiting on the porch: Dr. Marshall Rivers, a respected pulmonologist at Salt Lake Medical Center, and his wife, Marisol, a community health advocate known for her tireless work with migrant families. Junie greeted Dexter at the door, her familiar warmth anchoring him. She squeezed his hand, guiding him to a small foyer where carved oak floors reflected candlelight streaming from the living room. "Dad, Mom, this is Dexter," Junie said, her voice steady. As they shook hands, Marisol's gaze swept over Dexter's badge, Riverbend Clinical Observer, and a small Northwood medical pin. "You're Dr. Brooks?" she asked, eyes bright with curiosity. When Dexter nodded, she smiled. "Welcome to our home." Dr. Rivers, distinguished silver hair combed neatly, offered a firm handshake. "I hear good things about you," he said. "Any man who can make Juniper smile that way is more than welcome here." His voice was warm but carried an unspoken test. He would be watching. Inside, the dining room table was set with care. White linens, polished silverware, and autumnal centerpieces of pumpkins, gourds, and eucalyptus sprigs. Junie's younger brother, Leo, an architecture student visiting from New York, hovered by the dining table, quietly fidgeting with the napkins. He nodded at Dexter. "Nice to meet you," he said, his tone a half-smile of approval. Marisol guided them all to seats. "Everyone gather around," she said. "I've prepared a small roast with root vegetables." The rich aroma of rosemary and garlic filled the room, mingling with cinnamon from cider simmering on the stove. As plates passed and columns of gravy pooled over mashed potatoes, conversation unfolded across the table. Dr. Rivers asked about Dexter's rotation at Riverbend, its challenges, its triumphs. Dexter told of Portensville, the homebound patient with heart failure, and how Junie guided him in adjusting medication. Dr. Rivers nodded, impressed. She's been a mentor to you, I gather. Yuni Ba'amit. He's my favorite study partner. At Junie's prompting, Marisol asked, "What drew you to medicine, Dexter?" He swallowed, glancing at Junie. "When I was a kid, my sister was bullied because of things beyond her control. I learned early that health goes beyond blood tests. It's about dignity, about being seen. I want to help people who feel unseen." Marisol placed her hand on his arm. "We could use more doctors like you." Leo flashed a toothy grin. "Especially if they bring a nice sister for Junie," he teased. Junie elbowed him playfully as Dexter's cheeks warmed. Eventually, the conversation turned to wedding plans, how and when. Dexter shared the Huskies' game proposal story, causing quick laughter and soft ahs around the table. "Well done, son," Dr. Rivers said, lifting his glass. "To new beginnings." Glasses clinked, cider sloshing over rims. As dessert, pumpkin pie topped with a dollop of whipped cream was served. Marisol leaned in. "Juniper, we've seen your heart in your work. Your dad, and I want you to be happy. Welcome to our family, Dexter." Junie dabbed at her eyes. Dr. Rivers held out his hand to Dexter.
"So,
"I welcome you." In that warm glow, surrounded by love and acceptance, Dexter felt a surge of gratitude. From the cobbled streets of Pinecrest to the fluorescent lights of Riverbend, his path had been marked by faith, compassion, and now by Junie, the woman who taught him how to blend medicine with mercy. After dinner, in the cozy living room warmed by the glow of the fireplace, Dexter and Junie sat side by side on a well-worn leather couch, arms entwined. Photos lined the mantel. Junie as a child learning piano, as a teenager performing at local open mic nights, and in graduation robes from Renaissance High. Dexter fingered the leather-bound journal he'd given her earlier. She'd already inscribed the first page with a verse in her neat cursive. "Where two hearts heal together, there lies a symphony of hope." He brushed his fingers over her inscription, then opened his own jacket to reveal a folded letter. "Junie, your family's embraced me completely. Now I want to do the same for your mother, your brother, everyone you hold dear." He produced a commitment ring thinner than the engagement band, inscribed on the inside with their initials. "This ring is my promise to you. I will stand with you through every sunrise and storm." Junie's lips trembled as she slipped the ring onto his finger. "And I'll stand with you, no matter where the rivers lead." In the soft lamplight, they shared a gentle kiss that sealed the promise, the embers of the fireplace crackling as if in applause. Outside, Salt Lake's skyline shimmered, a tapestry of possibilities stretching to the horizon. Inside, Dexter and Junie, engaged, beloved, and determined, embarked on a future built upon shared purpose, unwavering devotion, and the knowledge that whatever storms lay ahead, they would face them together. Late autumn light filtered through the high windows of Riverbend Clinic's conference room, painting long slanting stripes across the linoleum floor. Dexter Brooks settled into the vinyl chair beside Juniper Rivers, their engagement party bliss still reverberating through his chest, even as he stared at the manila envelope before them. It had arrived that morning via FedEx, no return address, just his name scrawled in an unfamiliar hand. Something about its weight and secrecy set his nerves on edge. Junie's slender fingers trembled as she lifted the flap. "I don't know where this came from," she whispered, glancing toward the dark parking lot visible through the glass door. "I've never seen anything like it." He watched her face, as pale as the winter sky. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." She exhaled, nodding, and unfolded the first sheet. A faded photocopy of a letter dated October 12, 2002, on Pinecrest General Hospital letterhead. At the top, a typed line read,
Dr. Marshall Rivers, M.D.
Department of Pulmonology, Pinecrest General Hospital. Below, cursive handwriting, sharp, deliberate, sprawled across yellowed paper. "Dear Marshall, I've thought of little else but the conversation we shared last Thursday. I keep replaying your words over and over, that the dream of a life together might still be possible. But I can't ignore what I carry inside me. I am both terrified and overjoyed to tell you. I am with child. This was never part of our plan, yet I cannot deny the life blossoming within. My fear is that you may not feel the same way I do. I need to know if you will stand by me, that you will claim this child as your own. Pinecrest already buzzes with malicious whispers if our secret becomes public. I fear it will destroy you and me both. Please, Dr. Rivers, come see me at my home on Maple Lane this Saturday evening. We can decide together whether my courage can be your solace. Evelyn Hayes. Junie gasped, pressing a hand to her mouth. Hayes, she whispered. That's my mother's maiden name. Dexter's breath caught. Hayes, Evelyn Hayes. That's your mom's name before she married my dad. His pulse thundered as he flipped to the next page. There, scrawled in the same cursive, read a second letter, 6 months later. Marshall. I'm so sorry it has come to this, but I cannot bear the whispers any longer. The hospital administration has forced our hand. My pregnancy records are in limbo, and rumors spread faster than wildfire. For the child's sake, yours and mine, I need you to do what's right and claim me. Meet me one last time, at dawn, on the old logging road outside town. There's no other way. Evelyn. Junie's fingers shook as she skimmed the third page. Marshall Rivers. By now you know everything. Pinecrest stores offer no sanctuary for us. I will marry Marcellus Brooks. He insists he will raise our child as his own, and I accept that fate for our child's sake. When you read this, I will be gone, away to start fresh, leaving only a daughter behind who you will never claim. Forgive me, Evelyn. A heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the faint hum of the hospital's heating system. Dexter's mind whirled. Junie, these letters, Evelyn wrote them 20 years ago, to your father. Tears welled in Junie's eyes. He never mentioned any of this. He never talked about the truth. Dexter reached across the table and took her hand. I'm so sorry. His voice trembled. I didn't know. Junie closed her eyes, pressing her forehead against the envelope as though to absorb its weight. So, Dexter, her voice cracked. What does this mean for us? He searched her face. The woman whose trust he treasured above all else. It means, unless we're missing something, we're half-siblings. I was the child born to your mother, carried by Marcellus, but sired by your father, Dr. Rivers. Her head snapped up. You can't be serious. He nodded, sheepish. I can't reach him right now, he's in surgery. But these letters prove it. He swallowed, searching for words that might ease her pain, but found none. I'm your brother, Junie. She stared as though he'd become a ghost before her eyes. You think, because of these letters, I should believe them? Are you claiming you're my half-brother? Her voice trembled with disbelief, anger, and heartbreak. Dexter's shoulders slumped. I don't want to hurt you. I love you. You know that. I didn't want this, but I had to be honest. Junie wrenched her hand from his grasp, rising to her feet as tears spilled down her cheeks. I need to understand. She backed out, clutching the letters to her chest. I need to talk to my father. She vanished through the glass doors, leaving Dexter alone with his pounding heart. The future he'd envisioned, white-coated, triumphant, engaged to the woman he loved, shattered like glass in his chest. The corridor outside the conference room hummed with hushed activity. Dexter slid into an empty corridor nook and sank against the wall, legs drawn up. Every passing nurse and patient seemed oblivious to the storm raging through him. He stared at the floor, replaying each line of those letters. I am with child. Please claim me. I will marry Marcellus Brooks. The reality of his existence, raised as Marcellus's son, protected from the scandal that swirled around his mother, hit him as a thrill of betrayal. How many times had he clung to his father's leg as a boy? Heard the townsfolk whisper about Millie's illicit origins? Now he realized he'd been the other child, Evelyn's secret. He fumbled for his phone, thumb hovering over the call icon beside Dr. Rivers' number. No, he muttered, wiping his eyes. Junie should speak to him first. In a sunlit corridor at Salt Lake Medical Center, Dr. Marshall Rivers yanked off his surgical gown and mask, a bead of sweat snaking down his temple. He'd spent the morning removing a malignant tumor from a patient's lung, a complex 6-hour procedure, and was cramped and exhausted. A nurse handed him his cell phone. The screen displayed a single, anxious text message. "Please call me urgent." He tapped his scrub's breast pocket, pressing the phone to his ear. After 3 rings, a shaky voice answered. "Junie? Dad, we need to talk now." Her tone shattered him. "Junie, you okay?" He could almost hear her tears. "Meet me at the clinic. Bring Mom with you." His pulse hammered. "All right, stop by Riverbend Clinic in half an hour." He ended the call and exhaled, stepping into the flurry of staff in the hallway. His stomach lurched upon realizing what his daughter must have uncovered. He wondered, for the first time in decades, if his past had finally caught up with him. As he washed his hands and changed into fresh scrubs, he replayed 2 decades of secrets. Evelyn's pale face as she told him she was pregnant, his shame under Pinecrest's unforgiving gaze, the guilt that had driven him to bury the truth and watch Evelyn marry Marcellus without a word. 20 minutes later, the clinic's front door slid open to admit a shaken Junie, her cheeks streaked by tears. Dr. Rivers followed closely behind, linking arms with Marisol Rivers, her mother, who offered a steadying presence. As they reached the conference room, Dexter rose to greet them, meeting Dr. Rivers's gaze, eyes filled with confusion and dread. Junie took a trembling step forward. "Father, I received these letters this morning." She held out the yellowed pages. Dr. Rivers stiffened, and for a moment, his expression flickered between panic and resignation. Dexter rose as well, quietly hovering by Junie's side.
Dr. Rivers, I'm sorry.
These letters, Evelyn wrote them to you in 2002. She was pregnant by you. Dr. Rivers's breath stuttered. He glanced at his wife, who laid a comforting hand on his shoulder. Junie's hazel eyes burned with shock and betrayal. "You left her. You abandoned her. You never mentioned this to me." Her voice cracked. The weight of years settled onto Dr. Rivers's shoulders. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Junie, I owe you an explanation." Junie's glare turned ice cold. "Explain how you kept my mother's pregnancy a secret? How you watched her marry someone else, kept me in the dark?" Dr. Rivers's lips trembled. "I was ashamed. I was young, a resident juggling a demanding career. When Evelyn told me she'd carry my child, I panicked. Pinecrest was a small town. The scandal alone would have destroyed both of us." "You let her marry Marcellus," Junie spat. "You watched her raise our child as your goddaughter, while I had no idea I had a half-brother." Marisol spoke gently. "Honey, he was under immense pressure. The hospital forced a hush. They threatened his career. By the time I learned, he'd already made this choice." She turned to Dexter. "Evelyn trusted your father to protect you from stigma." Dexter swallowed, voice hoarse. "So all these years I lived as Marcellus's son. I was actually Dr. Rivers's biological son." He sank back into his chair, head in his hands. "My entire life was built on a lie." Dr. Rivers's chest heaved with emotion. "I am so sorry. I kept this secret to spare both of you. Evelyn asked me to, and I agreed. I thought if you grew up safe, loved by Marcellus, that would be best. I never imagined the consequences would be this devastating." Junie's tears fell freely now as she shook her head. "You robbed me of knowing my brother. You robbed Dexter of knowing his father. You lied to us, both of us." In that stifling silence, all the pride, love, and trust they had shared felt like a fragile wreath crushed underfoot. Over the next hour, they pressed deeper into painful truths. Dr. Rivers confessed that when Evelyn first told him of her pregnancy, he was a 28-year-old pulmonology resident who believed he could figure things out. But as rumors spread through Pinecrest General, the administration threatened to ruin his career unless he kept the matter quiet. Fear and ambition overcame his love for Evelyn. He sent a final letter, informing her that he'd abandoned the relationship and urging her to claim the child as Marcellus's. Evelyn, heartbroken but resolute, moved to the Brooks farmhouse. She and Marcellus married, and Dexter was born that December snow, his hazel eyes a silent echo of his true father. In Pinecrest, the Brooks name endured. No one ever knew the truth. And Evelyn lived with unspoken regret. Junie, the only child Dr. Rivers raised as his own, grew up believing her mother's last pregnancy had ended in miscarriage. As Junie sifted through memories, her first day of kindergarten, her father's pride at her school concerts, shadows of disfellowship flickered across her mind. She'd always sensed an unspoken sorrow in her mother's eyes when she glanced at her father. Now, all their unspoken moments surged into unbearable clarity, the overlooked glances, the hushed phone calls, the whispered consolations that had involved someone else entirely. Dexter sat silent, grappling with a flood of revelation. He remembered his childhood. Marcellus's laughter when he scored his first goal in soccer, Evelyn's warm embrace during thunderstorms, and the bitterness of watching Millie bear the town's cruelty alone. He had always protected the secret around him, though he never realized why. Now he felt emptiness shaped like a missing puzzle piece. When Dr. Rivers collapsed into a chair, his face ashen, he asked, voice trembling, "Dexter Junie, please understand. I was fearful. I thought I was doing the right thing by shielding you both." Junie's eyes burned. "Shielding me? You robbed me of a brother. Of my true identity." Her voice cracked, pride giving way to pained fury. "How do I process this? How do I trust anything again?" Dr. Rivers pressed a hand to his chest. "I know I've failed you. I don't expect forgiveness. But please know, not a day goes by that I don't regret it." Evelyn, silent until now, stepped forward, her own face lined with sorrow. "Junie, I carry that regret. I let him go because I thought Marcellus could give Dexter a stable home. But I never meant for you to grow up thinking you were alone, or for Dexter to learn in this way." She looked at her daughter, tears pooling. "I'm so sorry, my brave girl." Junie's expression softened, but the pain remained. "I need time," she whispered. She turned to Dexter. You didn't know."
I'm so sorry."
She touched his cheek, and he closed his eyes, welcoming the warmth of her hand. They left the conference room in a fragile knot. Dr. Rivers slumped between Marisol and Evelyn, and Junie walked alongside Dexter, clutching her engagement ring as though to protect a future that seemed to vanish before her eyes. Back at the Brooks home in Pinecrest, November's first snow dusted the potato fields a silvery white. Dexter stepped from his Subaru onto the porch, stunned by how familiar the home felt and how much it had changed in his mind. Evelyn opened the door, her weary face a mirror of shared grief. Millie, clutching Piper's ears, stood behind her mother, eyes wide with unasked questions. Dexter knelt beside Millie, voice steady but gentle. "Hey, Lil, news just came. I found out something." She glanced up at him, wariness and trust mingling in her gaze. "I'm actually Dr. Rivers' son." He watched her expression shift, confusion, shock, sorrow. Before he could explain, Millie bolted outside, tears in her eyes. Piper bounded after her. Evelyn called after him, "Millie, come back." Dexter rose, turning to his mother. "I'm sorry." Evelyn's tears fell as she gathered him into a tight embrace. "I wish I could have protected you from this pain." She held him as though to shield him from the winter wind. That evening, Dexter sat alone in his childhood bedroom, the posters of human anatomy boats now stripped from the walls, replaced by a single printed copy of the letters in a thin binder. Carefully, he read them again. Evelyn's words in 2002, Dr. Rivers' failure. The secret that had held him in silent bondage for 20 years. He closed his eyes, swallowing the lump in his throat. Downstairs, voices drifted through the floorboards. Evelyn's soft lament to Marcellus, Millie's muffled sobs in her bed, and a faint guitar melody, Junie practicing the same song she sang at the engagement. Where two hearts heal together. There lies a symphony of hope. He wondered, wretchedly, if the melody still held any truth. As he listened, his phone buzzed, an incoming text from Carmen.
I'm so sorry, Dex.
I'm here if you need me. Always. Dexter typed back. Thank you, Car. I love you. He set the phone aside and rose, crossing the room. He paused outside Marcellus's study door. The older man sat behind his oak desk, head in his hands. When Marcellus glimpsed him, he waved him in. Marcellus's voice trembled as he looked up. I wish I'd been honest with you from the start. Dexter sank into the chair opposite him. You did what you believed was right, but it hurt so many people. Dad, I don't even know who I am anymore. Marcellus pointed to a framed photograph on his desk, a younger Marcellus in a hard hat, beside Evelyn in scrubs, with a baby-faced Dexter between them. This was 55 Dogwood Drive, 2003. I held you after you were born, son, and told myself, no matter what, I would be your father. I raised you as my own because you needed a father, and I chose to be that man. You are my son, Dexter Brooks, no matter what biological father had a part. Dexter's shoulders shook. But that's not the whole truth. Marcellus nodded, tears in his eyes. I know, but it's a different truth, too. I may not have sired you, but I loved you from the moment I met you. I protected you because I wanted you to have a chance at a life free of whispers. I'd do it again if it meant you grew up safe. Dexter exhaled, clenching his fists. I want that, but I also want to face reality. Marcellus rose and crossed to him, placing a heavy hand on his shoulder. I understand, and I won't stand in your way. Downstairs, a soft, resolute knuckle-rapping echoed through the hall. Junie, standing in the doorway. She stepped into the study, her eyes carrying the weight of heartbreak and hope both. I need to know who I am,
she said softly.
I want to process this together. Dexter stood as well, heart swelling at her words. He reached for Junie's hand. I love you, he said, voice unwavering. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. I love you too, but I need time. The three of them stood in that humble study, Dr. Rivers's daughter, Marcellus's adopted son, and the father who had sworn himself to secrets for love, united by a truth that cut deeper than any scalpel, but also by the knowledge that love could still bloom from the ashes of lies. As winter closed in, Silver Ridge County lay hushed beneath a thick blanket of snow, and in Pinecrest, the Brooks house glowed with lamplight and the promise of reckoning. The final leaf had fallen from the old maple out front, an echo of the past releasing its hold. Dexter stepped outside, inhaling the cold air that tasted of cedar and change. He folded his arms to Junri's slender frame, and together they stared at the horizon, knowing their road ahead would be harder than either had ever imagined. But for the first time, they would walk it as truth-bearers, siblings not yet siblings, lovers not yet lovers, ready to rebuild trust from the ground up. In that moment, as dusk settled over the foothills, the symphony of their shared echoes, regret, love, sorrow, and hope, merged into a single note, resounding through the hush of winter's promise, a new beginning, brittle but alive. The weekend after the revelation had settled into uneasy frost. Salt Lake City's usual bustle felt muted for Dexter Brooks. Riverbend Clinic's corridors, once brimming with his and Junie's shared laughter, now seemed cavernous, full of echoes where her light had been. Their budding engagement, forged in the glow of triumph and shared purpose, now lay scattered among crumpled letters and fractured trust. That Friday, Dexter arrived at Riverbend early, mentally bracing himself for the long shift ahead. His badge clicked against the expired lanyard when he stepped through the sliding doors. Nurse Carlos Velasquez, ever observant, raised an eyebrow. Doc Brooks, he said quietly, dropping a stack of charts on the nurse's station. You look like someone robbed you of sleep. Dexter forced a tight smile. Late night, Carlos. Home's complicated these days. He accepted the green chart and flipped it open, scanning the vitals of a man in room 12. Thanks. Let's get this done. They finished morning rounds in a blur, Mrs. Ellis's postpartum check, Mr. Soto's insulin adjustment, a pediatric asthma case where Junie's absence was painfully apparent. Between each patient, Dexter found himself reflexively glancing at the empty chair where Junie used to sit. He missed the gentle brush of her hand when a child began to cry. He missed the way she coached him through unfamiliar procedures. By midday, his pager buzzed with an unreadable code. Code 3, Marcellus Brooks. The world went still. He blinked at the letters. Heart pounding. Marcellus, his adoptive father, had collapsed. Hospital, he asked Carlos, fear draining his voice. Pinecrest General. Pulmonology wing. Carlos raised a hand in apology as he scrambled to pull forms. I'm sending transport orders. Better go. Dexter didn't wait. He bolted down the hallway, past rooms where patients called out, "Good luck, Doc." He returned a weak wave, without stopping. The drive from Salt Lake to Pinecrest stretched out in frozen white patches of interstate, the clock hands spinning faster than his tightening chest. He replayed the confrontation between his father and Junie's family, the anger he felt at Dr. Rivers, the betrayal that had fractured him and Junie. Even now, rushing north, he struggled to separate guilt from fear. Did his absence compound Marcellus's stress? He arrived at Pinecrest General's front entrance, the familiar stone facade coated in ice. The emergency department's fluorescent lights glared above the sliding doors. Inside, a hush fell over him as he flashed his badge. He's in ICU room 4, the triage nurse said, glancing at his name tag. Pulmonology wing. He sprinted past the nurse's station and rode the elevator up 3 floors. When the doors opened, a narrow corridor led to ICU. Clusters of monitors hissed and beeped like restless machinery. He paused at the open door labeled Room 4, where a single bed lay surrounded by a half-circle of equipment. Marcellus Brooks lay there, face pale as porcelain, chest rising and falling with the aid of a ventilator. Tubes snaked from his arms to 4 bags. A heart monitor's rhythm glowed, pulsing red on the screen. In the dim light, he looked older than his 56 years, his shoulders sunken, beard streaked with gray. Dexter whispered, "Dad." And the ventilator cycled. He closed the distance, ignoring the sterile scent that made his stomach churn. Evelyn sat in a vinyl recliner nearby, head bowed as though praying. Millie leaned against the foot of the bed, eyes puffy from tears. The sight squeezed his heart so forcefully he felt he might collapse. "Dexter." Evelyn's voice cracked. She wiped her eyes and stood, moving to his side. She pushed her hand into his, her grip steady but frail. He collapsed this morning while chopping firewood.
Dexter slallowing bile.
Is he? Stroke, Evelyn said, voice hollow. Right side of his brain. They say the blood clot was massive. He's been intubated since they airlifted him here. Millie's head whipped around. He'll be okay, right, Dex? Dexter knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. We don't know yet, but I'm here. We'll get through this. He glanced at his father. Hands that once carried lumber were now strapped to monitoring cuffs. He remembered Marcellus's booming voice encouraging him to find a way if you want it bad enough, and now those words echoed back in grief. I'll talk with the neurologist. Find out what we're facing. The neurologist, Dr. Elena Marks, explained the situation with clinical detachment, but Dexter could hear the tremor in her voice. Your father's stroke is severe. The clot was in the left carotid artery. He's unresponsive, and half his body is paralyzed. We performed a thrombectomy to remove the clot, but the damage to his brain tissue is significant. Right now, it's a waiting game, sedation to reduce pressure, and we monitor for swelling. Sedation. Monitoring. Waiting. Each word landed on Dexter like a scaled weight.
He drew a breath,
forcing a nod. Thank you, Dr. Marks. Evelyn stood behind him, leaning into his shoulder as though his strength could stave off the nightmare. He could not stop himself. Tears welled and spilled down his cheeks. He squeezed his eyes shut, pressing his palm into his mouth. I'm so sorry, he whispered to his unconscious father. I'm sorry you had to find out that way. I'm sorry for everything. Evelyn stroked his hair. He'll fight, Dex. He's strong. He wanted to believe her, prayed for it, but fear deepened the ache. He gripped his father's clammy hand. I'm here, Dad. I love you. Late that afternoon, after family had finished their vigil for a while, Dexter stepped into the hallway to return a call to Junie. His hands shook as he dialed her number. Halfway through 2 rings, he hung up. He wasn't sure he could stand to hear her voice right now. Instead, he sent a text. Me at ICU. Dad is critical. We'll call you when there's news. He dropped the phone into his coat pocket and re-entered the room. He found Millie sitting on the edge of her father's bed, stroking his weathered hand.
Lil,
He said, voice aching. She turned, her eyes red with fresh tears. Hey, is he going to die? Her bottom lip quivered.
he knelt again.
We don't know yet. He pulled through the night. But there's a long road ahead. I promise I'll do everything I can. Okay, she whispered, nodding slowly. Evelyn joined them, wrapping her arms around both children. They remained in that embrace as the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, 3 souls clinging to each other, waiting for the slightest sign of hope on the monitor screen. As dusk settled over Pinecrest, shadows spilled down the halls of the hospital. Emotional exhaustion weighed on Dexter's shoulders like wet sand. He needed fresh air, a momentary escape from the sterile hush of machines. He stepped outside into the cold evening, drawing in a deep lungful of crisp air. The moon glowed faintly between wisps of cirrus clouds, and a single pine tree shifted its silhouette against the night. He dialed Junie's number again, watching as it rang once, twice, before voicemail. He left a trembling message. Junie, I'm so sorry. It's worse than I thought. Dad, he collapsed. I love you. Please, I just need you to know. I'll call as soon as there's any news. He ended the call, heart pounding. A light tap on his shoulder startled him. He turned to see Carmen, bundled in a heavy coat, concern etched in her eyes. I got your message, Dex. I came as soon as I could. He let her wrap him in a hug, resting his chin on her head. Thanks. I needed that. She led him back inside, through sliding doors now dimmed in evening twilight. They found Evelyn and Millie still at his bedside, monitors in soft glow. Desperation hung in the air, each breath a question. That night, he sat in a stiff wooden chair, eyes fixed on the wavering green line of the heart monitor. Marcellus's chest rose and fell with the ventilator's rhythm, each mechanical breath a prayer for a miracle. He gripped the binder of letters on his lap, recalling Junie's sorrow, Evelyn's regret, Millie's fear. He felt the world twisting beneath him, his identity unraveled, his father on the brink of death. And the woman he loved vanished into distance. He closed his eyes as exhaustion pulled him toward a brief moment of unconsciousness. When a strangled gasp jolted him awake, he saw DR. Marks rushing in, the intense red numbers on the monitor spiking erratically. Nurse, we need to intubate and prep for possible decompressive craniectomy. Swelling is increasing rapidly. Dexter's stomach lurched. He rose to stand beside his nephew, sorry, his father, praying as they rushed into crisis. But as Dr. Marks and nurses sprang into action, he felt a hand on his arm. Carmen's voice, soft but unshakable. Stay here, Dex. I'll stay with them. He nodded, grateful for her strength. As they wheeled Marcellus down the hall, Dex slipped back to his chair, burying his face in his hands. He believed he could face any exam, any emergency, until this moment. Outside the operating suite, Dr. Rivers lay unconscious as nurses prepped. Machines beeped in frantic rhythm. Hours passed in restless agony. Finally, the doors opened. Dr. Marks emerged, removing her cap, exhaustion creasing her brow. Dexter jumped to his feet. How is he? Her face softened, yet still carried professional restraint. The surgery went as well as we could hope. We removed the remaining clot behind the middle cerebral artery and performed a hemicraniectomy to relieve the pressure. He's in ICU now, sedation weaned but still intubated. He's stable for the moment, but he's far from out of danger. Dexter's shoulders sagged. Can I see him? She nodded. An hour from now if he maintains these vitals. He exhaled, nodding. In the graying hallway, Carmen waited by a window, thin autumn light glancing off her tears. She rushed to him. He's okay, for now, she whispered. He wrapped her in his arms, closing his eyes. Early the next morning, Marcellus lay in a new bed, a smaller gauge, a ventilator tube, sedation removed. His eyes fluttered open with a slow blink. When he saw Dexter's face, a faint flicker of recognition passed. He tried to speak, but rasped out nothing. Dexter leaned in, pressing his hand against his father's cheek. Dad, it's me. Thank God you're awake. Marcellus nodded, eyes watering. A nurse checked his chart. He's able to follow simple commands. Dr. Brooks, you should explain everything. Dexter cleared his throat. Dad, tonight was rough. But you pulled through. There were complications swelling in your brain, but they relieved it. You're going to need therapy, maybe months of rehab. But you're alive. Marcellus's thick finger pointed to the heart monitor. Beads, he croaked. Dexter realized he was asking about the monitor's readings. That's telling us your heart rhythm, he said gently. Your heart's beating strong. Marcellus's lips pressed into a relieved line. Pride, he whispered. Dexter hesitated. Pride or guilt? He exhaled slowly. Pride. I'm proud of you. I love you. He brushed a tear from his father's temple. Marcellus's eyes closed, a small smile curling his lips. Later, Junie arrived at Pinecrest General, breathless from the hour's drive. She rushed into the ICU, finding Dexter leaning over Marcellus's bed. She approached quietly, kneeling beside him. Dexter squeezed her hand, and together they watched Marcellus rest, eyes closed. Chest steady. Junie bent to whisper, Will he be okay? Dexter's eyes glistened. They say he has a long road ahead, but he's alive. That's something. He paused, brushing her hair behind her ear. I want to tell him the rest about us. She swallowed. About us. He nodded. I need to explain why it's not he shouldn't worry about Junie and me. We found out about the letters. Junie, he's my father, but I'm also his, but not in the way he thinks.
He drew a breath.
We need to tell him that Junie and our relationship, ends here. Junie's eyes burned. I know. She pressed her lips to his forehead. I love you, but you're my brother. The words stung like ice. Dexter closed his eyes, nodding. The warmth from Junie's hand on his back gave him courage. He had to end their romance right here, right now, before Marcellus fully awoke and realized what the letters meant. When Marcellus stirred hours later, the family gathered around his bed. Evelyn on one side, Millie clutching his hand, Dexter and Junie on the other. Dr. Rivers and Marisol hovered anxiously beyond the curtain. Marcellus blinked, gaze settling on the assembled faces. Where's, he croaked. His voice was hoarse, but his eyes were clear. Junie swallowed, stepping forward. Dad, I have to tell you something important. The room shifted, tension coiling like a serpent. Dr. Rivers moved to stand behind her, a silent support. Junie's voice trembled as she continued. We found Mom's letters. You know, before she married Marcellus, she wrote to you, said she was pregnant with your child. She looked at Marcellus, bracing herself. Dexter is your son. Marcellus's face went slack, his hand clutching the sheets. He closed his eyes. Evelyn stepped in, voice choked. Marshall, I'm so sorry I never told you. Marcellus waved her off, eyes still closed. I know, he rasped. Dexter bent to stand by his father, trembling. I'm sorry you had to learn this, like this. Marcellus nodded, breathing through clenched teeth. So, Junie, Dexter, you too. His voice was weak. Confusion flickering. Junie swallowed, tears streaming. We can't be together. We're half-siblings. Dexter let out a shuddering breath. Junie, I love you, but... He could not finish. Instead, he reached for his father's hand. Marcellus's eyes fluttered open, focusing on the rings on Dexter's fingers, two slender bands of platinum and diamond. In that moment, recognition flickered. You were always. Evelyn knelt beside him, grief and compassion in her gaze. Marcellus, it's okay. We'll heal. Millie shuffled toward her father, clutching his hand. Daddy, will you be okay? Marcellus's eyes softened as he looked at his children. Both of them. I'm alive. That's all that matters. His voice faded as he closed his eyes once more, drained by the tumult of secrets and revelations. That evening, Dexter and Junie walked out of Pinecrest General in silence. The chain of events, letters, betrayal, love lost, and his father's collapse drove them both nearly to their breaking points. Under the street lamp's glow, Junie slipped her hand into his. This isn't how I imagined us. He paused, taking her other hand. Neither did I. But I can't, he said, voice hushed. I love you, Junie, but now we're siblings. She nodded, touching her chest where the engagement ring sparkled like a shard of memory. I love you too, and I can't. We have to end this now, before anyone else gets hurt. He swallowed, eyes glistening. Walk me home. They walked down Frost Street, where autumn leaves, gold, copper, russet, blanketed the sidewalk. Their footsteps crunched in unison, a final echo of a shared love that could not be. At the foot of Dexter's porch steps, he stopped. I don't know what the future holds, he whispered, but I know you'll always be my family. She leaned in, brushing her lips to his cheek. And you'll always be mine. He embraced her, heart heavy, and they remained there until the skies softened into night. Then, reluctantly, Junie turned and walked back up Frost Street toward her parents' house. Dexter watched her go, her figure retreating into the darkness, knowing that what they had shared would forever be imprinted on both their hearts. Inside the Brooks household, the family settled into an uneasy calm. Marcellus, after a series of MRI scans and consultations, was moved out of ICU and into a private room. The neurologist's tentative prognosis. He would face a lengthy rehabilitation, right-side paralysis, occupational and speech therapy, constant monitoring for potential complications. But he was alive, and for the Brooks family, that was a precious start. That morning, Dexter woke to the familiar hum of a Pinecrest winter, frosted fields, geese honking overhead, and wood smoke curling toward pale blue skies. He slipped out the front door, finding Junie already waiting, breath swirling in crisp air. How is he? She asked quietly. Stable, he replied. Moved to the ward. He said he was proud of us as a family. Junie exhaled, leaning into his arm. I never thought we'd share a father like this. He turned to her, eyes soft. Neither did I. But we'll be okay. We have Mom, we have Marcellus, we have each other, just not as lovers. She forced a small, wry grin. Siblings, just like normal. Neither would ever be normal again, but there. In that January light, they shared a simple truth. Family could survive even the cruelest storms. It would take time, tears, and careful rebuilding. But they had each other. Two halves of a secret that would no longer define them. As they walked back up Frost Street, hand in hand, an unspoken promise hung between them. To carry forward the love they had once known, reshaped now as the bond of brother and sister. And somewhere in the stillness, among the pine trees and quiet snow, their future, though uncertain, felt ready to be written anew. A heavy silence hung over Pinecrest as winter slipped into early spring. The roads remained icy at dawn, and a pale sun hovered just above the horizon, painting the world in muted pinks and grays. After another long night at Pinecrest General's ICU, visiting Marcellus and checking on his recovery, Dexter Brooks trudged across the parking lot, crunching ice beneath his boots. The biting air stung his cheeks, but he welcomed it. It kept him from falling into the exhaustion that threatened to swallow him whole. Behind him, Juniper Rivers followed, her scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. Although they now faced each other as brother and sister, the bond forged through countless shared crises remained unbroken. They moved together toward Junie's car, conversation limited to brief updates. Dad slept through most of the night, she whispered. Nurse said he squeezed her hand when she mentioned you. Dexter forced a small smile. Good. That means he's fighting. They opened the car doors and settled into the heated seats. The warmth was a small comfort before the day ahead, both at the clinic and at the therapy center where Marcellus would begin his first session of physical rehab. As Dexter started the engine, Junie tapped her finger on the dash, studying her brother's drawn features. Dex, if you need to skip clinic and just be with Dad. He shook his head, eyelashes sweeping tears of fatigue away. We'll manage. I've got a student to precept at Riverbend today. I can't just bail. She sighed, but nodded, knowing the conflict between duty and family weighed heavily on him. Okay, let's just get through today. They drove in companionable silence, the car's heater humming. Ice crackled beneath the tires as they left town and headed for Pinecrest Haven Rehabilitation Center, a low-slung brick building at the edge of county farmland. When they arrived, they found Marcellus seated in a wheelchair at the entrance ramp, a blanket draped over his knees. He managed a weak grin when he saw them. Good morning, Dr. Brooks, he rasped, voice still raspy from the ventilator. Good morning, Junie. Dexter knelt, gripping the handles of the wheelchair. Morning, Dad. Ready for your first session? Marcellus nodded, pain flickering across his face. Let's get it over with. Junie guided her father into the therapy gym, a bright, sunlit space filled with parallel bars, exercise mats, and weights. Physical therapist Karen Liu, a petite woman with a confident air, greeted them. She wore comfortable athletic shoes and held a clipboard. Mr. Brooks, I'm Karen, she said, offering a firm handshake with her gloved hand. Today, we'll focus on strengthening your right side and teaching you to transfer from bed to wheelchair. Are you up for it? Marcellus exhaled a shaky breath. Let's do it. Over the next hour, Dexter and Junie watched as their father labored. Karen coached gently. Okay, Mr. Brooks, press through your left leg. Keep your right foot on the floor. 1, 2. They guided him through sitting at the bedside, shifting his weight, standing on unstable legs. Each attempt sent a jolt of pain through his torso, but he grimaced and persevered. At one point, Dexter felt tears prick his eyes watching the man who once carried him on his shoulders struggle to stand with both hands gripping the parallel bars. Finally, Marcellus collapsed onto a padded mat, breath ragged. Karen steadied him. Good work. That's enough for today. Let's get you back to the wheelchair. Junie wiped the sweat from her father's brow. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Marcellus allowed himself a faint smile. Thanks. Dexter squeezed his shoulder.
Rest now, Dad.
We'll come check on you this afternoon. Back in a hallway, Dexter pulled Junie aside. I need to get to Riverbend soon. Are you staying here? Junie nodded. I'll be here until Mr. Maxwell's home visit at 3 o'clock. She pointed at the clipboard in her hand. It's important. You go. He offered her a small, grateful smile. Be careful. She folded her arms around her chest. You, too. With a final lingering look, Dexter dropped his father's wheelchair and jogged out to his car. The midday sun had climbed higher, but the shadow of Pinecrest's farm silos still cast long shapes on the cracked pavement. As he turned onto County Road 17, his phone buzzed, a text from Carmen. I'll cover your shift if you need to be at your dad's side. Just say the word. He shook his head, hands gripping the wheel. Thanks, Car. I've got this. Riverbend Clinic's waiting room buzzed with a late afternoon crowd, moms with toddlers, elderly veterans in knit caps, migrant farm workers clutching paperwork. Dexter ducked inside, punched in as on call, and slipped into his white coat. He greeted Nurse Carlos at the station. Long day? Carlos offered him a half-smile. You from Pinecrest? I saw you dash out this morning. Dexter brushed a hand through his hair. Dad's recovering after his stroke. But I can't skip clinic. Carlos nodded sympathetically. Tell you what. I'll give you a heads up if anything urgent comes in. You focus on the critical stuff first. Thanks. Dexter squeezed his Yamulka-clad cap and marched down the hall. He had just settled into his first patient when a sudden commotion erupted at the front doors. Two paramedics wheeling in a teenage boy on a gurney, his skin ashen, eyes wide with panic. Here's a 16-year-old male, suspected epiglottitis, stridorous, severe airway compromise. One paramedic barked as they passed him off to ER nurse Lydia Sharp. His throat's swollen shut. Dexter's pulse hammered. He lifted the paper mask to the boy's face. Breaths came in shallow, rasping gasps that sounded like a dying whistle. His neck was rigid, jaw clenched, skin mottled gray. Dex's medical instinct snapped on. Epiglottitis, rapid swelling of the epiglottis that can close the airway. Immediate action was critical. "I'm ready," he said, voice steady as he followed them into the treatment room. Nurse Lydia placed a pulse oximeter on the boy's finger.
O sad 70%.
His heart raced at 150 BPM. Dexter moved into position. "Get me a flexible fiber optic bronchoscope and the crash cart. Prepare for a surgical airway if needed. Grab an 4 kit and 100 milligrams of intravenous ampicillin sulbactam." Nurse Sharp nodded, hustling to comply. Dexter crouched beside the adolescent, murmuring, "I'm Dr. Brooks. I'm going to help you breathe, okay? Keep fighting for me." The boy's eyes widened, fear flickering, and he nodded faintly. His throat muscles quivered with each attempt to swallow. Dex gently tilted his chin up. "Tilt your head back. Open your mouth as best you can." He grasped the laryngoscope, inserting the blade carefully as Lydia inflated the amber bag beneath the boy's nose with gentle squeezes. Within seconds, every muscle in the boy's neck tense as though resisting the maneuver. His oxygen saturation dipped to 60%. Dex's jaw tightened. "Prep for a cricothyrotomy," he barked, recognizing the severity. "Scalpel, 11 blade. Tracheal hook."
Bougie. Prepara 3,0 unkuferett.
Lydia's voice cracked over the din of alarms. "On it, Dr. Brooks." Dexter's hands moved with rehearsed precision. He located the cricothyroid membrane, delicately pressing to identify the depression between Adam's apple and thyroid cartilage. A towel under the boy's neck helped extend it. Dex inhaled, dropping to one knee. 30 seconds until DSAT below 50%, Lydia announced, counting each ragged breath. Time slowed. He grasped the skin with his thumb and forefinger, making a vertical incision about 1.5 centimeters. The boy's eyes bulged with panic. Dex whispered, "It's okay. You're doing great. Just stay with me." Lydia offered soft reassurance. "We've got you. Keep breathing for us." Dex quickly extended the incision horizontally through the cricothyroid membrane. A rush of air hissed as oxygen escaped from the boy's lungs. Dex gently inserted the bougie into the opening, feeling it slip through cartilage and ring toward the trachea with a faint click. Dex guided the 3.0 endotracheal tube over the bougie. As he withdrew the bougie, greenish-gray mucus clung to its tip. He advanced the tube until he felt a second click. Placement confirmed. Ventilate and check.
Lydia resumpe valveventilation.
And the oxygen sat monitor sputtered from 58%, 75%, 88%. Relief flooded Dexter's chest. He tied gauze around the tube, secured a commercial neck strap, and listened with a stethoscope as bilateral breath sounds returned. Though faint, they were present. The boy's color eased from gray to pale pink. "For antibiotics now," Dexter instructed, his voice steadier than he felt. The adrenaline roared in his veins. Lydia handed him the pre-drawn vial. He flushed it through the foreline. The boy's eyes fluttered with awareness. "Doc," he rasped. Dexter bent close. "You're okay. You're breathing now." The boy attempted a nod, throat still sore, eyes brimming tears. "Thank you." Dexter offered a small, exhausted smile. "You did the hard part. Now rest." Nurse Sharp inserted nasal cannula under the ETT to maintain a light oxygen flow and monitored continuously. Dexter jotted epiglottitis, SICU for airway monitoring, on the admission note, then leaned against the wall, heart still pounding. He closed his eyes, replaying each incision, each click of cartilage, each ragged breath they'd fought to preserve. Lydia approached, gently tapping his shoulder. "That was impressive, Dr. Brooks. You saved him. He gave a tired nod, wiping sweat from his forehead. Let's keep a close watch. Later that evening, Dexter escaped the hum of monitors and alarms by walking out the clinic's front door. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and neon streetlights cast a yellow glow on Lincoln Street's slick pavement. He pulled his coat tighter, still buzzing from the adrenaline of the earlier crisis. Breathing in the cold air helped him ground himself, focus on the tangible present instead of spiraling thoughts of family drama. His phone buzzed a message from Junie. I'm here if you need to talk, Red Heart. He stared at the screen, thumb hovering over her name. He texted back. Thanks. Need time to process.
Talk soon.
He slid the phone into his pocket and crossed the street toward the Rusty Break Cafe, a haven where he and Junie used to study. Inside, it was warm, soft lamplight, the scent of roasted coffee beans, and a couple engaged in hushed conversation over steaming lattes. He ordered black coffee and sat in their usual booth, overlooking the parking lot. The door chimed faintly as Carmen slipped in, shrugging off her coat. Hey, she said, sliding into the seat opposite. Thought you'd be here. He offered an exhausted smile. Needed coffee, and maybe someone who didn't see me hack away at a kid's neck. She laughed quietly. You've got a strange definition of Tuesday. He traced the rim of his mug. I can't shake images, snooty cartilage, that boy's eyes, his voice cracked. If I'd been a second slower. Carmen reached across, placing a hand over his. You were not a second slower. You were exactly where you needed to be. His eyes flicked to the door. In the corner, a college student in a Riverbend hoodie waved awkwardly, then returned to their laptop. He sipped the bitter coffee, letting its warmth seep into his chest. Clinic's been non-stop, he murmured. Dad's stroke, Junie and we had to face that. And now this. Carmen squeezed his hand. You're doing what you were meant to do. You're saving lives. Still, it's okay to break down. He exhaled, running a hand through his tousled hair. I know you're right. They sat in silence, the cafe's soft background noise cushioning their weary hearts. Outside, the engine of a delivery truck rumbled to life. Carmen gently pushed her coffee aside. I've got to head back. My shift starts soon. You coming? Dexter nodded, gathering his coat.
Yeah.
I'll walk with you part way. They exited into the crisp night, golden streetlights illuminating thawing patches of ice. They strolled together for several blocks, stopping beneath a lamppost. Look after yourself, she said. Don't let everything pile on. He nodded, looking down. I promise. She tucked his stray hair behind his ear.
Good.
I'll see you tomorrow at Riverbend. Same time. She hugged him briefly, warmth pressing into his chest. Then she slipped into the dark and vanished around the corner. Dexter continued toward his car, stepping carefully around puddles. He reached into his pocket for his phone, but thought better of it. He would let Junie know he was okay once he'd steadied himself. As he turned onto Frost Street, headlights illumined a delivery van barreling around the curve too fast. Dexter realized in a flash that the driver hadn't seen TikTok the stray cat slinking across the asphalt. If he didn't act now. He ran forward, adrenaline rising again. The boy earlier flashed in his memory, fragile and gasping, saved by swift action. Now he needed the same focus. TikTok froze in the van's path. The driver barely braked, tires squealed on ice. Dexter dove forward in a lunging sprint, catching the cat by the scruff just as the van screeched past, mere inches from tragedy. The driver's horn blared, but the van fishtailed around the corner and disappeared into darkness. Dexter stumbled to his feet, the cat's heart racing in his hands. He cradled it gently against his chest, feeling the creature's rapid purrs trembling at his fingertips. The world seemed to hold its breath, the hum of the idling van engine, the hush of suburban night, the distant bark of a dog. He knelt on the cold pavement, ensuring the cat was uninjured, checking for lacerations or broken bones. TikTok clung to him, for damp and heart still fluttering like a hummingbird's wings. With relief, Dexter noted no visible wounds. He breathed out, voice calm. Hey, little guy, you're okay. He stroked between its ears, the cat nuzzling his hand. Still holding the feline, he walked toward a set of nearby apartment units. He knew TikTok belonged somewhere along Frost Street. Everyone recognized the stray orange tabby. Wilcox's Emporium had a flyer taped to the window. Artisan gifts, cat found? Call. He glanced at his phone. 2:47 a.m. Most residents were asleep, but a muted light glowed from one upstairs window. He climbed the stairs, the cat purring steadily in his arms. At apartment 13B, the door opened to reveal an elderly woman in pajama pants and a fluffy robe. She blinked, startled.
TikTok?
Where did you— Oh, Dexter. You found him.
Yeah.
He dashed into the street. Narrowly got clipped. Dexter extended the cat. The woman reached out, tears in her eyes. My heart. He's home late again. She eased the cat from his arms. Thank you. Thank you so much. Who else would save my boy? Dexter nodded, voice gentle. Glad he's okay. He stepped back. The woman closed the door and peered through the peephole. He lingered on the landing for a moment, reflecting on how saving a pet felt both small and monumental after a day marked by life and death decisions. Then he slipped down the stairs, returning to his car. Inside, he peeled off his coat, revealing scrubs smudged with tape residue and the faint smell of antiseptic. He sank into the driver's seat, still feeling his heart race. The adrenaline that had carried him through both the boy's epiglottitis and TikTok's near-miss began to ebb, leaving him numb and hollow. He rested his head on the steering wheel, closing his eyes. The weight of the day pressed upon him. Marcellus's stroke, the painful truth of his and Junie's relationship, saving a teenager's life, then a cat's. He had functioned on instinct, on training, yet he drained every resource of mind and heart. As he exhaled, his phone buzzed with 2 missed calls, one from Junie and one from Evelyn. He knew he ought to return them, but his voice felt raw and fragile. He opened the window, letting the cold air wash over him. He thought of his father lying in ICU, tubes supporting every breath, and the promise he'd made to keep fighting alongside him. He thought of Junie, grieving the loss of their romance, but still offering quiet support. He thought of Carmen, unwavering in her compassion. Determined, he started the engine. Tomorrow, he would face therapy sessions and clinic rotations with the same quiet resolve that had driven him all this time. But tonight, he would let himself rest. If even for a few hours before the morning call to his patients, his family, and the life he vowed to protect. As the car's headlights faded into the darkness of Frost Street, Dexter Brooks exhaled one final breath for the night, a breath stolen from the jaws of crisis, both medical and personal, knowing that tomorrow would demand every ounce of his strength once more. The Monday after Marcellus's surgery, Riverbend Clinic felt smaller, sterner, its warmth muted by Juniper Rivers's shadow of grief. For weeks, she had moved through its hallways like a ghost, phantom pain of lost love and fractured family gripping her heart. Now, the place where she had built her career and found her purpose offered only suffocating reminders of everything broken. Junie arrived before sunrise, the sky already streaked with pale orange. Pulling on her scrubs and fastening her badge, she tried to smooth the edges of her shaking voice. I'm here. She had texted Dexter earlier, but she knew he could not bear another confrontation. Instead, he had gently reminded her to focus on patients, and so she complied, though every step felt leaden. At the nurse's station, Carlos Velasquez gave her a nod, concern etched in his brow. Junie, you look tired. She forced a polite smile. Long night. Dad's resting, so I wanted to be here. He slid a patient chart toward her. Mr. Randall's blood pressure spiked again. He's waiting in room 3. Junie took the chart and nodded, fingers tightening around its corner. As the first patients trickled into the waiting area, an elderly woman with an oxygen tank, a young mother clutching her toddler, Junie's hollow gaze flicked between them. She lifted her medical mask, inhaling the familiar antiseptic scent that always used to buoy her. Today, it tasted like ash. Moments later, she stood before Mr. Randall, a retired railroad worker with chronic hypertension. His fatherly nod greeted her. "Good morning, Ms. Rivers." "Good morning, Mr. Randall," she said, voice catching despite her best effort. She took his blood pressure, both arms, in case his stroke had introduced a new asymmetry. The cuff hissed. She glanced at the monitor. 178/112. "Still high," she murmured. "Are you taking your medications as prescribed?" He winced. I thought skipping one night wouldn't hurt." She took a breath, crouching to meet his eyes. "It's not just one day. You know what happened to your neighbor's husband, stroke last week. I don't want that for you, Mr. Randall." He nodded solemnly. "I understand. Forgive me." Junie patched his chart with instructions for diuretics and scheduled a follow-up home visit. "I'll see you Thursday," she said. As he left, she wiped her forehead, pressing a gloved hand to her temple. Each reminder of another stroke harked back to Marcellus, her father, and the guilt that she couldn't fix either one. By mid-morning, Junie's shift demanded her full attention. A young boy arrived with a scraped knee, his mother beside him, apologetic. A diabetic man needed wound care. A pregnant teenager needed prenatal counseling. Junie offered calm, practiced care, gentle reassurance, expert guidance. Yet beneath her composed exterior, her chest ached. In the break room, she perched on a plastic chair, sipping black coffee that cooled too quickly. A voicemail from Dexter, his voice quiet but urgent, echoed. "Junie, please call me when you can. I need you." She pressed her thumb against her phone, blinking back tears. He was already juggling too much, his father's fragile recovery, their shared trauma, and now he needed her support. If only she could be the sister he deserved, rather than the woman he loved. Returning to the floor, Junie found Dr. Elena Marks waiting behind the nurse's station. "Junie, can you come with me? We have an emergency consult." She nodded, following Dr. Marks into the small conference room. Inside, a CT scan flickered on the wall monitor. A middle-aged woman named Mrs. Cole, admitted after a motor vehicle accident. She lay sedated in the adjacent room. Dr. Marks pointed. "She has mild head trauma and a small subdural hematoma. I want you to review her chart, update her vitals every 15 minutes, and assist with neurological checks." Junie swallowed. "Of course, doctor." As she stepped into Mrs. Cole's room, she braced herself for the smell of antiseptic mingled with antiseptic warmed breath from the ventilator. The woman's pale face looked fragile, like porcelain, her lashes resting on her cheeks. The nurse at his side, Lydia Sharp, glanced up. "She's stable for now, but we need constant vigilance." Junie nodded, donning gloves. She checked neurological reflexes, pupil responses, motor strength. Everything seemed minimally reactive, but she stayed alert. Slight constriction, slight grimace when pain was applied. After noting decreased responsiveness on the right side, she documented it and called Dr. Marks. "Dr. Juniper Rivers," she said into her phone. "I have a slight decrease in right-sided response. Does she need repeat imaging?"
Dr.
Marks's voice crackled over the line. "Yes. Order a non-contrast CT right away. I want to rule out progressive bleeding." Junie swallowed and rushed to place the order, adrenaline pulsing in her veins. She relayed instructions to the charge nurse, who readied radiology. As Mrs. Cole's stretcher rolled away, Junie squeezed her gloved hands into fists. Every crisis at Riverbend felt like sanding away layers of her own self until only raw nerves remained. In the hall, Junie found Carmen, who had arrived for her after-school shift. Carmen's eyes widened. "Junie, I tried calling. Are you okay?" Junie forced a tight smile. "We have an urgent consult. I need to get back." Carmen nodded, concern etched in her expression. "I'll handle things here. You don't have to rush yourself." Junie managed a grateful nod, but as she passed into Mrs. Cole's room, her heart felt as though it was fracturing. She administered bedside care, ensuring oxygen flow, monitoring pupils, checking intravenous lines. The minutes dragged. Each beep of the heart monitor had a hollow echo in her mind. Each squeak of rubber soles on tile felt like a metronome to her spiraling anxiety. Finally, she learned Mrs. Cole's repeat CT showed no new bleeding. Relief washed over her in icy waves. She exhaled, awarding herself a momentary reprieve, only to have that reprieve snatched away by the memory of Dexter's urgent text. By late afternoon, Junie tried to focus on calmer tasks, updating vaccination records for returning migrant families, educating a young refugee mother on pediatric nutrition. But every time she heard a child cry, she blinked back a sob. She missed Dexter's steady presence at her side, his quiet thumbs up when she made a difference, his steady hands guiding her through tough decisions. She missed the shared confidence they'd held in each other's eyes when a tragedy struck, now tainted by the knowledge that he was also her brother. She glanced at her cell phone. 4:37 p.m. At 5 o'clock, she had arranged a brief meeting with nurse manager Carlos to discuss her schedule for next week. She dreaded it but knew it had to happen. Touching the laminated poster of CPR steps on the break room wall, she finally answered Dexter's text under the green strip of fluorescent light. "I'll call you tomorrow. I'm not okay." Then she pocketed her phone, steeling herself for a difficult conversation. At precisely 5 p.m., Junie pushed open Carlos's office door. He was perched behind his desk, reviewing paperwork. The blinds were half-drawn, casting stripes of light across his tired face. "Junie," he greeted, offering a gentle smile. "What's on your mind?" She sat in the guest chair, her legs wrapped in the hem of her scrubs. She clasped her hands in her lap. "I wanted to talk about my schedule and something else." Carlos noted the tremor in her voice. "Go ahead." "I can't stay here." She exhaled sharply, as though bracing for impact. "Riverbend, it's too painful right now. Every room holds a memory of what happened. I need to take a leave of absence." Carlos's eyes widened. "A leave?" She nodded, pressing her lips together. "I love my work, but after Dad's stroke, after everything with Dexter, I can't function here." Carlos guided her to stand. "Take the time you need. We'll adjust your shifts and find someone to cover you. Your place at Riverbend will be waiting when you're ready." Junie bowed her head. "Thank you." He hesitated. "Are you sure you want to quit?" She shook her head. "Not quit, just step away for a while. I need to figure out who I am without Riverbend." Carlos nodded, understanding. "Tell me when you want your last day to be, and we'll work from there." Junie swallowed. "Today." He frowned, but didn't argue. "Okay, let's get you through the paperwork." As twilight deepened the evening sky, Junie returned home to her parents' modest brick house on Willow Lane. The air smelled faintly of apple blossoms, the first trees in the backyard budding. She paused at the front door, inhaling their fragrance. Even here, a part of her longed for what had been, simpler days before secret surfaced, before she lost her first love. Inside Dr. River sat at the kitchen table, reviewing Marcellus's therapy plan. He looked up as she entered, concern shading his features. "Junie," he said quietly, rose from his chair. "How was clinic?" She forced a small smile. "It was fine. I need to talk." She set her backpack down and sank into a chair. "I'm taking a leave from Riverbend." His brows knitted. "A leave?" She nodded, eyes brimming. "I can't," she looked away. "Every time I see that clinic, I see us. I can't breathe there." He set the therapy plan aside, folding his hands. "I understand." She bit her lip.
I'm sorry.
"I know how much this place means to you. You built it from scratch." He inhaled, closing his eyes. "Riverbend saved my life, Junie. And it's saved so many others. But now what you need is more important." She met his gaze. "I need to find myself again, Dad." Tears slipped down his cheeks. "You've always been yourself, Junie." She shook her head. "No, but I was Junie Rivers' nurse and fiancée to Dexter. Now, I'm neither. I need to leave to figure out who's underneath all of this." Dr. Rivers reached across and touched her hand. "I respect that. I'll support you." She exhaled, relief mingling with sorrow. Thank you. Their eyes met, a father's love and a daughter's gratitude silently shared, anchoring her resolve. That night, Junie packed her belongings into a battered duffel bag, 3 pairs of scrubs, her well-worn nursing shoes, a framed photo of her and Dexter at the Huskies game, and a silver locket shaped like an otter, her late mother's. As she folded a white lab coat into the bag, her phone flashed, a single message from Dexter. Junie, I'll always be here.
Love you.
She pressed a trembling hand to her heart. She loved him, her brother, her first love, but they could never be anything more. With a ragged breath, she deleted the message, swallowing the fresh ache in her chest. At dawn's edge, she drove away from Pinecrest, her duffel bag tucked in the passenger seat. Through the frosted windshield, she watched Riverbend Clinic's silhouette fade into the distance. Each mile took her farther from the place she had given her all, where she had nearly lost her soul. Junie did not know where she would end up, perhaps a small community clinic in Montana or a travel nurse assignment crossing state lines. She only knew she had to chase fresh horizons, free from the ghosts of her past. As the road stretched before her, she steeled herself for the uncertain days ahead. Though her heart felt raw and broken, a single truth glowed within. She was no longer defined by her role at Riverbend or by the devastating secrets uncovered. She would heal, starting now, one careful step and one uncertain mile at a time. The early morning light filtered through the pale curtains of Marcellus Brooks's hospital room at Pinecrest General, no more intubated, but still tethered to monitors that beeped steadily. His right side was weak, his speech labored, but his eyes burned with a determination that cut through the haze of pain and regret. As the door opened, he recognized his son, Dexter, entering, pale, exhausted, shoulders heavy with worry. Behind Dexter lingered Dr. Marshall Rivers, Junie's father, and Evelyn Rivers, whose presence tethered both halves of the fractured family. Marcellus's chest rose unevenly as he forced himself to sit up, the muscles in his paralyzed right arm trembling. He spoke with halting breath. Dexter. Dexter knelt at his bedside, gripping Marcellus's left hand. Dad, you don't have to talk. Just focus on the therapy. Marcellus closed his eyes briefly, wincing at the effort. No, I need to say this. He turned his gaze to Dr. Rivers, who stood solemnly against the pale wall. Evelyn hovered behind her husband, arms crossed protectively around Junie, who was absent, having decided to step away from Riverbend. Marcellus drew in a ragged breath. Marshall, Evelyn, Dex, listen to me. I've spent the last few days watching you all care for me. I realized what I took for granted. He turned his head to gasp for air, then continued. Evelyn, I was wrong to push you away. I was wrong to accept you and our child without ever acknowledging his father. His voice cracked. I should have fought to be with you. I should have honored Dexter as my son from the start. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of sorrow and relief. She stepped forward, resting a gentle hand on Marcellus's good shoulder. Marcellus, none of that is easy to hear. You protected Dexter, yes, but you kept me from you when I needed you most. Marcellus nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. I know. I was terrified of Pinecrest's whispers, my career, my reputation. I thought I could keep you safe by marrying me, by giving him my name. But I realize now I was keeping all of us in the dark. Dexter's jaw clenched, eyes stinging as he listened. Dad, Marcellus raised his left hand in a pleading gesture.
Son, please.
I owe you the truth. I owe you my apology. When I first met Evelyn, I loved her. But when I learned of her pregnancy, I panicked. Instead of standing by her, I let fear dictate my choices. I let our son grow up thinking he was only my godson, and I missed every moment watching him become a man. He closed his eyes, tears falling. Dexter, I am so sorry. I wish I could go back and do it all differently. Evelyn took a tentative step forward. Marcellus, apologizing doesn't erase the past. But it does mean you're finally seeing how much pain you caused. He nodded solemnly. I want to make amends. I want to be the father I should have been if I can. If you'll let me. Dr. Rivers, who had remained stoic until now, stepped closer. His voice trembling, he spoke for the first time since Marcellus's collapse. Marcellus, you saved my career when you married Evelyn and raised Dexter. I'll never forget that sacrifice. But you also took my place in my daughter's life. I can't forgive you yet, but I see your pain. I see your repentance. I will pray for both of us. Junie's absence was a weight in the room, but her presence was felt in the quiet sorrow of her parents' faces. Marcellus looked at Dexter. Dexter, son, if you can ever forgive me, I promise I will spend every day making it right. I love you. I love Junie. Dexter swallowed hard, gripping his father's hand. I need time, Dad. This was a lot to learn. Marcellus nodded, tears in his own eyes. I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Evelyn knelt beside Marcellus, placing a hand on his chest. You must focus on recovery now. And if there's anything I can do, he squeezed her hand weakly. Just be my wife again. Help me heal, both my body and my soul. She stared at him, anguish and love mingling in her gaze. I'll try, Marcellus, but promise me you'll keep being honest. He drew a slow nod. I promise. Outside the hospital door, Junie stood in the late morning sun. Her departure from Riverbend felt like a rift through her very core, but she knew her father needed her. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door and entered the sterile lobby where her mother awaited. Marisol Rivers, her father's sister, who had arrived to lend support, wrapped Junie in a gentle embrace. Your father is eager to see you, Marisol whispered. Junie clutched her mother's hand. I didn't know how to face him after leaving everything behind. Evelyn offered a sad, understanding smile. He's in ICU. He's been waiting. Together, they ascended to the ICU, where Dr. Marks stepped aside to let them pass. Marcellus lay, eyes closed, breathing steadily thanks to careful management. When he sensed movement at the doorway, his eyes flickered open, a faint smile revealing the joy of seeing his daughter. Junie knelt at his bedside, tears streaming down her cheeks. Dad, she whispered, voice cracking. Marcellus struggled to reach for Junie's hand. Junie, I'm so sorry. She swallowed hard, choking back tears. I thought I had to leave, to heal, but I realized I needed to be here with you. He closed his eyes, a single tear escaping. You have nothing to forgive me for. Everything I did for love, although it was selfish and wrong. I ask for your forgiveness, my daughter. Junie knelt closer, bridging the gap with a trembling hand on his. Dad, I love you. I forgive you. But I won't forget. I'll help you recover. He leaned his head back, content. Danke do, Junie. Thank you. At that moment, the fractured pieces, father, mother, half-siblings, found a fragile unity in their shared remorse and mutual forgiveness. Though the road ahead was long, lit by the steady glow of hard-earned trust, they would walk it together, rising from the wreckage of secrets toward the promise of healing. Spring's thaw gently unfurled across Silver Ridge County, coaxing green shoots from sodden earth and painting hazel hillsides with fresh leaves. In the quiet light of dawn, Pinecrest's meandering roads felt softer, less burdened by the harshness of winter and the storm of secrets that had upended so many lives. Inside Pinecrest General's rehabilitation wing, Marcellus Brooks sat in a sturdy upright chair beside the therapy table, his right arm still encased in a support sling. He worked deliberately to lift a small, plastic water bottle with his weakened hand, muscles trembling but determined. Across from him, Dexter Brooks offered calm encouragement. Nice and steady, Dad. You've got this. Marcellus managed a small, proud grin. Feels good to be able to feed myself again. His weathered face betrayed lines of lingering guilt, but also a spark of hope. After months of draining recovery, physical therapy, medications, and the painful reckoning with past mistakes, he'd slowly reclaimed enough strength to stand on his own. In the next seat, Juniper Rivers studied Marcellus's form, ready to assist if needed. Her own transformation mirrored his in many ways, though she'd stepped away from Riverbend. Her compassion and skill remained undiminished. She now volunteered part-time at a local home health agency, traveling to nearby farms and subdivisions to tend to patients who couldn't make it to town. Today, she arrived early at the rehab center, clipboard in hand, quietly determined to help Marcellus take these first real steps toward a more independent life. As Marcellus placed the bottle on the table, Dr. Elena Marks entered, smiling warmly. "Excellent work, both of you. We'll transition him to a walker next week." She turned to Dexter. "Your father's progress has been remarkable." Dexter nodded, eyes bright with relief. "He's given it his all." Evelyn Rivers slipped into the room from the hallway, a gentle smile on her face. "Morning, everyone." She exchanged a bittersweet look with Dr. Rivers, who appeared moments later. The older couple's presence felt like a healing balm. Two families, once divided by pain, now woven together by forgiveness and care. Dr. Rivers stepped forward, offering Marcellus a supportive hand. "Ready, Brooks?" Marcellus grasped it. "As I'll ever be." With Junie on one side and Dr. Rivers on the other, Marcellus rose to his feet, tentative at first. Then sure. He shifted his weight into a sleek walker. Each step clicked on the polished floor, a testament to months of perseverance. When he reached the opposite chair, he lowered himself with measured grace, and a quiet cheer rose among the gathered circle, family and caregivers alike celebrating this small yet monumental victory. Later that afternoon, the Brooks and Rivers families gathered in the rustic parlor of Marcellus's farmhouse, a red barn with twin white cupolas that overlooked the newly green fields. A low table held a simple meal: roasted chicken, spring vegetables, and freshly baked cornbread. Wildflowers from Junie's garden lined the table in mason jars, each bloom a promise of renewal. Millie Brooks, now thriving in middle school, practiced her cursive at the table while laughing with her cousin Leo Rivers, who'd come home on break from architecture school. Carmen and Dexter slipped into seats near Junie, their camaraderie warm and genuine, though no longer romantic. Across the table, Dr. Rivers and Marisol Rivers exchanged proud glances, watching their daughter adjust to a gentler pace of life, a world beyond Riverbend's frantic rhythms. Marcellus cleared his throat, capturing everyone's attention. "I want to thank each of you for standing by me through my accidents, my mistakes, and my recovery. I know I have a lot to make up for, especially with you, Dexter." He began, addressing his son. Dexter offered a small, forgiving smile. Evelyn placed a hand on Marcellus's. "We've all learned hard lessons this year. What matters now is what comes next." Marcellus nodded, turning toward Junie. "Juniper, thank you for never giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve it." Junie reached across and squeezed his hand. He drew a deep breath and continued. "Family can be messy and complicated, but it can also be the greatest source of strength. I've been given a second chance at both health and life. Starting today, I want to be the husband Evelyn needs and the grandfather Millie deserves. It's time I step up." As he spoke, sunlight angled through the barn windows, illuminating his worn yet hopeful expression. In that moment, the room felt sacred, a confluence of two families, once divided by deception, now united by compassion and new beginnings. Later, as dusk drained the sky of color, Dexter and Junie strolled to the barn's hayloft, where they paused beneath the gabled roof. Junie straightened the quilt folded over an old wooden chair, an inheritance from her late grandmother, while Dexter tucked stray hay strands from her hair. "You look happy," Junie said softly, eyes tracing the distant horizon where emerald fields met lavender twilight. Dexter smiled, slipping his hand into hers. "I am. It's been a rough road, but this feels right." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I've been happier, too." He shifted to face her. "I'd like to show you what I've been working on." He gently pulled a wrapped package from behind his back, a simple wooden frame carved in oak. Inside was a pressed flower poem. "Together, roots run deep. Though storms may break us, new blooms follow." Junie examined the poem, tears in her eyes. "It's beautiful." Dexter's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's our story, separate, yet intertwined. I want to build something new with you, as siblings, yes, but also as best friends. If you'll let me." She closed her eyes, leaning into him. "I wouldn't have it any other way." Behind them, the barn door creaked, and Marcellus's tired but contented laughter drifted downward on the evening breeze. Evelyn emerged, calling, "Dinner's at 6. Don't let the chicken burn." Junie and Dexter shared a fond smile, then joined the rest of their blended family at the dinner table. As they sat together, parents, children, siblings, and in-laws, storytelling began. Millie recounted a misadventure in science class. Leo teased his cousin with an exaggerated mimicry of their first meeting. Dr. Rivers and Marisol Rivers traded quiet jabs about hospital bureaucracy. And Carmen, seated beside Dexter, laughed genuinely, her presence a stabilizing force. In that humble barn-turned parlor, laughter resonated in the beams overhead. Flanked by loved ones forged through hardship and forgiveness, they embraced this moment as an unequivocal celebration. Not only an ending to the scars of the past, but the beginning of a shared future, one built on honesty, empathy, and unconditional love. As the candles flickered low and the first stars winked awake in the vaulted sky, each family member sensed it. Life's greatest treasures are born from resilience, and new beginnings often blossom from the soil of redemption. Under that barn's simple roof, the Brooks and Rivers families welcomed a dawn of promise, together at last, ready to write their next chapter. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.